Ooh, got some volume tonight, huh? All right. I'd like to call to order our May 8th City Council workshop. It's 5 o'clock. We're starting right on time. And we gotta thank you everyone for being here. Please turn your phones off if you haven't already, or please mute them. Just a reminder.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I just did it myself, so we have a pretty full workshop. I imagine we're going to take just about most of the hour and a half that we have. And the first item on the agenda, everybody's here, I should say, all 5 counselors are here. So the first item is a Sisters Parks and Rec update and community park funding.
So Mayor Jen Holland is making her way up here to give a presentation. Just kind of preface this by saying, one of the council goals for this year is to build and expand our partnerships with our local agencies and other districts in Sisters, and sort of find ways to collaborate on some of our long-term priorities that we share. I had the opportunity to attend one of the Sisters Parks and Recreation District board meetings and give an update on happenings at the city and what the council's been working on. And we've talked about the potential for joint city council and board meetings in the future. But we have an exciting project just next door that is in the works. So we thought it would be a good opportunity for Jen to attend and kind of give an update on the concept planning for the new community park and talk about some of the partnership opportunities between SPRD and the city. So she has a presentation tonight and, of course, a chance to have a dialogue with the Parks and Recreation District.
Welcome, Jen.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
You as well. I want to put it right in front of me. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and letting me come and talk to you all tonight about the project we have going on next door. We're trying to stop calling it the old elementary school and calling it the new community recreation center and community park. And so when you hear me say those words, you'll know what I'm talking about. So first wanted to start off. Oh, wait, I got my little clicker here. I first wanted to start off, maybe. Oh, I got too excited with it. Okay, apologies. So we first want to start off with just a high level overview with City Council about where we are in relation to the whole project. And so in March, we signed a lease agreement with the school district for 25 years. And that is for the entire facility minus the A wing. And so you'll see up here on these pictures, the wing that's still white, that is going to be retained by the school district. And I'll explain that in a second. And then all the grounds are included in that lease agreement. And so when we first started this conversation with the school district, the site is about 48,000 square feet and our Cofield Center is 10,000 square feet. And then the annex, which we rent, is 5,000 square feet. So currently we operate out of 15,000 square feet. We wanted to walk before we ran. And we also last thing we want to do is build a center that is not full all the time. And so we wanted to have the opportunity to grow, but also not have a space that was empty because of being too much. And so, and the school district at that point expressed this need for wanting some additional fallout space because of the growth patterns that we were seeing in the community. And so when we first had these conversations, they wanted to earmark that for additional potentially kinder wing or what have you. They've since changed their tune on that. As I'm sure you guys know, they're now looking at subleasing some of that, which is totally fine. We have it written into our lease agreement that who's ever in that sublease has to be aligned with operations over at the new center, as well as the fact that when those leases expire, we have first right of refusal to then expand into that wing. And so the part that we're going to be taking over is about 24,000 square feet. So it's still more than what we have right now, but not too much to where we can maximize that space. So the lease, what I was trying to explain with our lease is that it's a very mutually beneficial lease. It's not a triple net lease. We have the school district is responsible for all major systems. So the roof, electrical, the HVAC, all that stuff, they are responsible for. And the goal is that in coming next year, that they're going to be moving into, ideally, the plan is that they're going to be taking over the Cofield Center and renting that out from us to use that as their administration building. They still have to, school district board still needs to kind of determine what they're going to do with that old site, but that is the intent for them to move into that facility. And then kind of the difference between their rent that we would be charging the school district and the rent that they're charging us is very similar to what we currently are paying out with the annex. So there's not a big hole on our budget for this transition. As you can see on this drawing up here, there's three key areas that we need to remodel in there before we take it over. Functionally, we could go in there tomorrow and it would be fine, but schools don't always make good community centers, and part of that is because all the rooms have to be the same size for their classrooms, and we need a variety of different room sizes to meet our needs. And so the three projects that we have that we'll be going out to bid for at the end of the month are in the commons area, which is currently where there is a stage, and I would say in a normal school, that would be where they eat lunch, but they don't eat lunch in that school. Or they eat lunch in the classroom. They don't eat it in the commons room. So we're going to transition that into being a multi-use recreation area that'll really serve as a senior lounge where people could do, play cribbage, do a puzzle club, do a book club, but then we could also use it as a large meeting space for our community, because we know that large meeting spaces are of a prime in Sisters, and there just never seems to be enough. We also have in the hallway on to the gym, there is a room that we will be two classrooms that we will be removing a wall in and transitioning that into being our fitness studio. And then there is currently a music room that has risers in it that we will need to remove those risers to be able to just use it as a multi-purpose room. So pretty basic stuff. We are adding 2 ADA bathrooms in the commons area, so that'll be a little bit more of a lift with the construction, but everything else is pretty basic just to get it more as a multi-use space. And then our goal is to move into that site in January of 2025. We will likely move our preschool in earlier than that, because the Promise Preschool, we are actually sharing the early childhood wing up there. It's listed as the C wing. We're creating a secure early childhood wing so that parents know that even though it's in a multi-use community center, that Joe Public's not going to be walking back into where the preschool is. And so the school district's going to keep one of that side for their Promise Preschool, and then we're going to keep the other side for our preschool program. And we both have the opportunity to expand within that spot, those spaces, to meet growing needs. So the school district's currently trying to get additional funding to add another Promise Preschool, and then we are in the middle of determining, based on our need with our community, if we need to open a third classroom this next year.
So where are the preschools on that?
It's the purple.
It's the purple.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then what you see on the outside to the right of that is will be an enclosed preschool play area that will be open to the public when the preschool is not open. And so that's very common to have a preschool component that serves a preschool, but then as soon as preschool's over, it's a community asset. So so that's kind of the high level overview of the inside of it. Before I shift to outside, do you all have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so in the area that's going to be multi-use rec area, possibly for senior lounge and community meetings, are you keeping the stage
It's a great question. We are not. There is transition, or is in the plan to remove the stage. Right now, that stage hasn't been used for quite a while. It's actually currently being used as a library. And one of the things that I've been talking to community members about is that, as our school district has added new assets, I think that the demand for that stage has kind of gone away because people really shifted to the auditorium over at the high school. And so there still will be people can still access those resources at the school district. People can rent the auditorium, they can rent gyms, they can do that kind of stuff. And so, in order for us to maximize that space, that was one of the determinations. So, we might need to have some photo taking opportunities because we had a little bit of community sentiment of seeing it sad that it was going to go away. So, um,
Thank
and
you.
of course. Okay, well, I will shift to the outdoors. Maybe. Oh, so shifting to the outdoors, we have this 8-acre parcel that is currently designed to serve elementary school kiddos because that's why it's there. And what we are kind of walking into is we're walking into a site that has restricted access, and that's kind of atypical, if you will, for elementary schools. Usually it's restricted until school is out, and then there is an opportunity to access it. But the school district has a lot of reasons why they keep that locked up. Um, but we are really excited to be able to reopen that and make that asset actually accessible to the community. We're also walking into a space where a lot of the amenities are outdated or they just need to go away because they are not used. So, a picture I show there is a dugout that has a big hole in the ceiling, and then a lot of dry rot at the bottom. That actually, we've been working with a lot of community partners, and one of them is Little League, and they've already told us, it's great that it's there, but we don't use it. And we actually would prefer that all that be removed to just have more play fields because they don't actually use that diamond as a play diamond. And so there's a lot of opportunities for this site to take the amenities that are there and bring them up to industry standard at this point. And so I love these pictures of the bar playgrounds. These remind me of when I was a kiddo, and they're still fun and they're still knocking kids' teeth out because of right. And so there's an opportunity to shift to new approaches. The other key part about this is, like I said, this was designed for kids. This wasn't designed to be multi-generational. This wasn't designed to be multi-use. And so it's really important for us as we look at this opportunity with this park to not have it be one focus, but to be able to serve a variety of people and serve a variety of interests. So moving to the next slide. Our goals with this project was to develop a community park that serves all ages, that increased ADA accessibility, that maintain the space for current and future district programs. Because one of the things that I've said in a lot of our community outreach is that, short of the school district, Sisters Park and Recreation District's probably the second biggest user of these fields because that's where we do a lot of our youth athletic programs. And hopefully we'd like to be able to do some of our special events over there as well. And so while we lost some space with the Leveling New Roundabout that's going in, we wanted to make sure that we're not turning around and leasing this building from the school district and then turning around and having to also lease a whole bunch of land to do our youth athletic program. And so maintaining that green space is kind of key to us. Also, in park design, you don't typically design every little nook and cranny possible. You want to maintain that lovely green grass. And so that was important to us. And then we also wanted to make sure that we met the community need. This is an opportunity for our board to do something that they haven't had an opportunity to do before, to hear from the community. We've had a lot of recent plans and a lot of recent outreach that's been done, not only by us, but by the city of Sisters. And But we also wanted to just refresh it. There's been a lot of new folks coming into town. Are there new things that we've missed? And what we kind of found out is it's still the wants are still the same. But hey, we were able to confirm that. So we hired a consultant back in September of 2023 who is out of Eugene called DLA, and they facilitated a lot of this community outreach for us. And they came up with 4 different concept designs, and we presented those designs to the community in an open house not very long ago. We invited the community to come and give us feedback. We also shared those designs with our community partners, including the city. And overwhelmingly, there was one design that saw a lot of support, which we'll show you in the next slide. And which was great to have a lot of consensus in regard to what people wanted to see. So on the next slide, this is a zoomed in version of the picture. And what you'll see is that we have this lovely green entryway when you walk into the park. That's not really fully developed right now because of the fact that we still think we might need to use that space as a overflow field for youth athletics. But the board has made it clear that if that is something that isn't needed, that's a really good future opportunity for future recreational amenities. We want to manage kind of that entry point, right? Because it'll be the main entry to the facility or to the park. But we also know that this is a big chunk of land, and big chunks of land in Sisters are hard to come by. And so how can we maximize what's there? But it's very clear with the board that until we actually use this space, understanding the reduction in space that we have now with the new property lines, we need to just keep that open. But it's great to know that they are open to a future amenity there. So you'll also see as you kind of enter more into the park, one of the first things you might notice is that lovely paved walking path. Right now, when you go over to the elementary school, there's a great path that goes along the building, but it doesn't walk all the way around. And so this lovely paved walking path will allow just the casual walker to access the park, mom with a stroller, individual with a walker or wheelchair, and it just allows you to access all these points of the park in a very safe way. You'll also probably notice pickleball courts. It's like right there. And so our original plan was actually to put those at the far west corner. But when we got updated property lines from ODOT, that no longer became an option without us really cutting into parking and really putting those courts a little closer to community member houses than we wanted to. And so right where they stand works out quite well. They kind of are tucked right in there by the building. We're not concerned with the sound with that building because, as one of our preschool staff said, we're currently running preschool with them right outside the door as it is, and them outside's actually going to be less of a sound issue. And it kind of, like I said, just kind of fits right perfectly in there. Our goal is, we went with the 8 courts. We do have a donor who has, or it's a group that's donating. And they were, really advocating for 8 courts. And the nice thing about 8 courts is that we can do tournaments there, which will bring in people to the community, being, heads in beds. And it will also, help meet the demand with pickleball, because pickleball is just, in Sisters, we have 300 members in a pickleball group, and that's not even just random, I want to go pick up a paddle and go, hit a ball. So we're really excited about that because these would be the first dedicated public pickleball courts in Sisters. And we are the only community in Central Oregon that doesn't have them, which I'm sure you've heard a lot. The other thing about this design is that we are going to be utilizing one of the existing playground structures that is over there. So while the pictures I showed you earlier were kind of the older playground structures, the school district actually has about 7 different structures out there. And there's one that is in fairly good condition. And so we're going to lean into that, and we're going to add another element and for our K through 12-year-old playground. So that little kidney shaped play area that will serve there. And that is a great location too, because it keeps it to where as a parent, you can keep an eye if you have another kid on the field, but then you can have your other kiddo on the structure. And then as you continue to shift over, you'll see that area that's designated for the pre-K. When I'm going to talk about timing and budget and everything in a little bit, the pre-K playground is actually not included with that. That is, our goal is to get that executed this summer. We have a different funding stream for that, and so that's not included in kind of some of these other conversations in regards to funding and timeline. And then what you'll also see is it was important to us. We heard it from community members and we heard it from it'd be great if there could be a replacement of the courts that got removed. I know that the city got some phone calls and we got some phone calls about where's the basketball? Where do I go shoot hoops? And so that there's some courts on that plan that are on the to the right, and it's kind of deceiving. It looks like there's only going to be hoops on one side of the court. That's not accurate. We're going to have 4 total hoops there. We might actually add more than that, but we'll have it to where people can do a full court. It might not be actually full court, but a court basketball or do half court basketball outside. So that'll be a nice add.
Is that on the east side where the portables are currently?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
Yes. Thanks. And the school district will be removing those portables, and they're also going to be removing the play structures that we won't be using. We're just working with them to delay that until we have a plan in place and a funding until we secure the grant to be able to move forward with everything. And then you'll notice that the property is not the actual shape of the property, and that's because the school district is retaining what I like to call an awkward pizza slice for their bus barn, their old bus barn, and then there's this weird triangle that goes down. They're retaining that. It's not part of our lease agreement because they do want to have an opportunity, if needed, to look at workforce housing there. And so I don't know a timeline on that. It's kind of more of a maybe situation. We are allowed to use that property, but we're just not going to develop in that land. So
And where is that?
I cut it off of the picture.
It's outside the.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird shaped property to zoom in very easily. So
It's all the east side.
yes, correct. Any questions on that? So this is our board of directors did approve this as the preferred concept. And so our next step is to then go out to bid to get the architect drawings and do, you guys all know that things change from the concept design to the actual design, or to, there might be underground systems that we might be missing, but the amenities are the list of amenities, which I'll go over in the next slide, are what has been approved. And this, ideally, we'd like to have this be as close as possible to our design. Next slide.
Oh,
Thank
money
you.
tree went away.
We're gonna go highlights first. So kind of the highlights with this design is that we're putting this property that is, yes, public land as it is, but hasn't really been accessible to the community out back, making it accessible to all community members. And so, and it'll be like any other park where it's dawn to dusk. The amenities that have been approved for that site include maintained green space, as you guys saw, 2 play structures, 8 pickleball courts, a picnic shelter, paved walking path, a covered multi-use basketball courts, and everybody's favorite, restrooms. And so these are all things that we all know are in need. And in fact, many of them were identified as priorities with the Parks Master Plan. And so I was lucky enough to sit on the Parks Master Plan committee as they're going through that process. And so I know one of the key things that the city is up against is trying to meet that level of service that even though we as a city have this great amount of parks and we're surrounded by the lovely national forest, we still are downtrending from where the national standard is for for available and planned parks. And so this will really help meet that goal, as well as the fact that identified in that plan where it was increasing ADA accessibility, having more paved walking trails, more accessibility between interconnectivity between parks. We all know pickleball was also identified on there without a site, if you will, identified. And then also adding more play structures and picnic shelters and restrooms. And so it's nice that by kind of working with the city, with my role with sitting as an advisor as a Parks Advisory Board, but then also the relationship that we have with Jordan and the ongoing relationship we've had with the city to make sure that we can kind of kill multiple birds with one stone, for lack of a better saying, apologies. So the next slide. I'm just again talking about the outside part of this minus the pre-K play structure. So this whole plan, one of the things that I didn't point out, it's not as sexy as everything else, but we also will be restriping that parking lot because that parking lot is great for buses and parent drop off, but it doesn't really maximize the spaces there. So we'll be maximizing that by restriping that parking lot. So the whole project is about $1.325 million. And so what we've done, our approach with this is, like I said, we've secured a very large grant with a donor to help fund pickleball courts and other amenities that support those pickleball courts. But we've submitted a grant application for the local government grant program with the state. We have been very successful at getting these grant programs in the past. We have received 3, actually 2 that have helped fund the Bike Park 242 and 1 for our skate park. And so we are feeling in a good position to get this grant. And we actually are very lucky in the fact that the funding for that grant program just increased because of lottery dollars meeting their benchmark to be able to do that. And so I know you guys are familiar with the local government grant program because the city also takes part in it. The difference is that we are at a 40% requirement match because our special district is bigger than the City of Sisters population. And so when you think of what that match requirement is for you guys, it's usually 20%. And correct me if I'm wrong, but for us as our special district, we're actually 40%. And so our 40%, what makes up that percentage is we have that sizable grant or that sizable donation that I shared with you. We have earmarked district funds that are going to go to that, as well as we're able to use, some staff time towards that, and then volunteer hours. But we do have a deficit, or we do have a need for an additional $125,000. And so one of the things that Jordan and I have been talking about is what is that opportunity to work with the city on this? It really marks off a lot of your guys' priorities with the Parks Master Plan. We continue to talk about partnerships and working together to do things better, to serve the community. Is this a opportunity to earmark some SDC funds, since you guys collect park SDC funds, and we don't, to be able to support this project? So if it's not funded by the grants, what does that mean? Well, we got a backup plan. We're going to phase it in. We could also go back out for the grant next year, but we're still hopeful that it's going to get passed. But if it doesn't, then we will phase in the project and do and build things based on when available funding is. And so assuming that the grant is funded, then we would start construction in spring of 2025, which doesn't really seem like it's that far away. When we first started having these conversations, I was like, that's so far away, but it's really not. And then one of the things that this has really allowed us to do as a district, just as a side note, we as a district we're only 26 years old, which sounds like, wow, that's so old. We're still a very baby district. And so our board is going to be, we just renewed our strategic plan earlier this year. And part of that, which, Mayor Preden was involved in that process, so thank you. And one of the things that is earmarked in there is in 2025 that we will go through a comprehensive planning process and really look at the level of service that we as a special district are providing, how we can continue maximizing our relationships with our partners, but then also what is our long-term plan. You all probably have heard me say a million times, we are one of the lowest funded park and recreation districts in the state. Well, that hasn't changed. And so we have, our business plan for this site is, we are very confident that the rental opportunities that we have, and that there will be a lot of things that we'll be able to do with this site. But if the school district comes to us tomorrow and says, hey, you want to buy this from us? How are we going to be in that position to do that? And so the board will consider if they want to change the tax rate within the district. And so that's not an easy process. And we're going to be watching Madras, because Madras Aquatic Center is actually trying to do that in this election cycle, where they dissolve and reform at a higher tax rate that is actually more sustainable for them. So that is in the years to come, but it's really exciting that our board's even forward thinking like that. And I just wanted to give you guys that information, because I think it's very pivotal. As while we might be this baby district, we're small but mighty, and we want to make sure that we are here to serve the community the best way that we can, but that we're funded appropriately to do so. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you mind if I start off?
I do.
Okay. That's okay. I'm going to go first anyway. I want to talk about pickleball.
Yeah.
As a designer, it's one thing I think about is long-term, about how you build things and how things are completed. Has there been thought about having them covered, or having some of them covered? And if so, has there been thought about putting in some of the maybe concrete footing infrastructure to make it easier to do so in the future?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because we know that in the Parks Master Plan, it was actually a pickleball complex that it was covered. I don't know if it had lights in it, but I know it was a covered plan. So that is our intent, that when we build it, that it will be built with the infrastructure, with the footings, to be able to put a cover on it. And it's why we actually really leaned toward that design. There was another design that had 5 courts stacked on 3 courts, which wouldn't have necessarily been as easy to cover. And so that what I keep on calling an 8-pack it allows it for a future cover.
Yeah. Well, and the other good thing about 8 is when you do brackets of tournaments, it just divides real easy, so you can run a tournament pretty cleanly. So anyway,
100%.
that was all I had. Go ahead.
Well, just a comment. As Jennifer knows, I've seen what happens when cities and park districts work hand in hand, and how successful it is for the community. I've kind of been pulling on that saw with my bow since I came here. And, I think that we should see what we can do to try to fill that funding gap at some point. I mean, that's what this discussion is, but I certainly would want us to look at that. And secondly, when you're ready to go out and redo that district levy, let me know, because you are the lowest funded one in the state, I believe, except maybe one pool district in Toledo. So it's short-sighted to undercut when you do these things, and they come to haunt you 23 to 24 years later.
Right.
And I think you guys do a great job with the money you have. I'm stunned, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's a pickleball tournament, I don't know anything about pickleball. So if there's a pickleball tournament, do they run into the evening? And if so, I hear there might be lighting in the future, but is there a way of lighting it? If we're saying the park is open dawn to dusk, does that include the pickleball courts? There's a couple of questions there.
Great questions.
Okay.
So as of right now, we are not we aren't planning on lights at the park. And so, because one of the things that we want to be very mindful of is the dark skies ordinance.
Right.
And with the fact that even though it is a community park, that it's surrounded by homes. And so and with putting lights in parks, you also are inviting a variety of different things. And there is a lot of different schools of thought in regards to that. But as of right now, it's not, and I've talked to our pickleball group about that as of right now, that is not on the list. It's not anything I've talked to the city about because it might change the evaluation process. It doesn't mean that we couldn't put the infrastructure in there if that is ultimately the goal, but I think we want to make sure that we continue to be good neighbors. And we've talked about, what would it look like for us to do some, what do you call it? Like dome lighting for the walking path. But then again, do we want people accessing the park when it's dark? And so as of this point, we are not building in any lights into it. You asked about pickleball tournaments. We would design it on a way, they don't usually go that late. The kind of the key, the play for pickleball is 8 to 1.
Ah.
Because after 1, it gets a little too warm, especially during the summer. And so one of the things that I've been communicating with our preschool folks is that, if there is this concern that there might be noise with nap time. Well, during nap time is not when they're usually playing. And again, they're going to be far enough away to where it won't be an issue. But so I could still see a tournament going from 8 to 3, but not typically later into the evenings. Plus, we want to get those folks out into the community, right? And
Yeah.
accessing those businesses and those restaurants. So
Well, and tournaments by their nature tend to be around weekends, not weekdays.
that's very true.
Okay, and then a couple more questions. So my understanding from what you presented is the park property is owned by SSD6.
Correct.
Okay. Then they maintain it.
No, we would be on the hook for maintaining this property, which is, so thank you for bringing that up because that is one. So two things in regards to that. We have put into our lease agreement because we already have a lease agreement with them where we have these parks that are funded by state dollars and we're required to have a 25-year lease with them. And we have very strong language in that lease that says that basically around the protections for those parks because they have to remain public access. And if they get taken off that public access role, then we not only have to, we either have to pay the grant back with interest, or we have to find another location to build it. And so we have strong language in there to protect us from that. The other thing, oh my goodness, I apologize. What
No,
was the
that-
other comment? Oh,
yeah.
the ownership of it. So, and
Yeah.
maintenance. So with the pickleball court specifically, I can tell you, we are, part of the donation is to construct it, but then we're getting in a user agreement with them where they will have specific time where we'll always have at least 2 courts open, but we haven't figured out the exact time yet, but it's probably going to be like Monday through Saturday, 8 to 12, where they have hours that are set aside for the pickleball club. Anybody can join the pickleball club. There's a small fee, but anybody can join it. But that in and of itself is going to help fund the overall maintenance and long-term repair of it. So not only will they help fund it through a user agreement with us, but they will also be responsible for maintaining it. And so it's a great relationship that we have with the local pickleball club, and it's honestly a very common arrangement that people have in parks and recreation and with pickleball. But in regards to the outside, the school district will be maintaining the
Grass.
irrigation.
Uh-huh.
We're going to be working with them to be maintaining that as well. There'll be an additional feed during that time frame, but it's this area is like exact opposite of the valley, and so the growth season is not necessarily as long as it is in the valley. So
Thank you.
you're very welcome.
And I just, one other comment, I really am pleased to hear that you are not in a triple net lease. Those only favor the landlord. And it really opens up more funds for you to do some of the things you've been talking about today. So kudos to you and to the school district for being willing to enter into just basically a straight lease.
Absolutely. I can say that Kurt and the school board have been really great to work with. They understand that this is a community asset that they don't want to see sitting empty by any means. They heard the community through the visioning process. The people wanted to see that being a community center. And they've been really fabulous with doing what they can to make it as easy as possible. So
With the operations and maintenance, the school district's responsible for that, for the building? And does that include like janitors and labor, or are you gonna be supplying that?
no, we'll be taking care of the custodial and just the day-to-day stuff. And like, let's say if there is uh, has happened in a fitness class before, somebody drops a weight and it goes through the wall. We would repair that type of stuff, but it's more the major system. So, and it'll be the same turn for the Cofield Center. So we will be responsible for the major systems at the Cofield Center, but the difference is that's a 10,000 square feet facility where this one's, close to 50,000 square feet. And it's a little older than the Cofield Center. So they're more likely to have some issues.
Those are big deals.
Exactly. And I mean, roofs have to be repaired, right? And so, I mean, a roof that large is pretty spendy. And so, so we are very lucky that the school district is on board with that.
I do have one more question when you're done.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you know if SSD 6 is thinking about putting solar panels on that property because that roof has got a lot of sunlight?
I have not heard of that.
That'll
So,
save you some money on electricity.
I'm not sure. I think they're not really looking into putting in any more money into it, but but just kind of really maintaining it to be a good rental property. Um,
They're also hedging their bets in case the growth becomes so much, they need a second elementary schools too. So, and they might just need a few of the classrooms like a wing
Right.
down the road, right?
I said
You-
solar lights, I meant solar panels. Sorry.
That's okay. We knew what you meant.
Have anything?
Thanks for coming, and I look forward to working with you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you very
It's
much.
gonna be great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I could sit there and say a lot of nice things, but you already know. So, yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Just one last point, Mayor. Councilor Ross mentioned, the partnership opportunity here with contributing towards the project. One of the reasons why, staff would, support that recommendation would be, recognizing that this is an opportunity to leverage funds like a substantial state grant, local donations and funds from the district to accomplish several projects that are on your master plan that are unsited, right? So the pickleball complex is one, playgrounds, all, ADA access playgrounds, another additional restroom, ball fields, and, a new, parkland that's open to the public with trails and everything like that. So, from a standpoint of, bang for your buck, for a small, contribution compared to the overall price of the project, the community gets a new community park with a lot of those amenities that were identified in the parks master plan. So the timing on this is interesting, right? We have a draft proposed budget that we're about to, get out to you for next week. One way to kind of approach this is, we can I can put in a placeholder and have that discussion during the budget committee meetings to kind of, vet that as a council, but also the budget committee. And that decision point can come later, right? But at least we have something in the budget. So we don't have to amend the budget in the future or something, or pull it out of the contingency or something like that. I think we have 1.3 million in parks SDCs. And I believe that, with the long-term lease agreement, and with the projects that this funding could contribute towards, it would be eligible for the SDC funds. So it could be a source.
I'm willing to give you a head nod right now to add a placeholder in the budget for this.
Already heard me say it.
Yeah. I see 5 nods. So there you go.
Thanks.
So sorry you have to amend the budget unless you already put it in there.
How soon?
It's
do you
draft until it's published.
The match. Well, if we had a letter of commitment, that would be great. But by the time like writing the check, it would be somewhere in, but and the end of the year, early next year.
Yeah, but I haven't worked with those funds. Just wasn't sure what
Absolutely.
application and meeting the requirement.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if in a month, if we had a letter of commitment, that'd be great. So
I think we can come up with something.
thank you.
All right.
I really appreciate your guys' continued partnership.
Yeah.
You guys are great.
It's just going to get better.
It's gonna be great. We're gonna have some joint pickleball tournaments. We're gonna have
Gonna be
city
able-
versus park staff. It's gonna be fabulous. Oh, but you can be a cheerleader.
Okay.
Okay.
Sharing with you.
Okay.
Goalkeeper.
Thank you, Jen. All right, we got about 45 minutes. You think we can do it? All right, Scott.
Okay,
ne-
speaking of Parks Master Plan, unsighted amenities that were identified, the next topic is the community garden, the different proposals. So Scott is going to do a brief staff report. We also have representatives from the community garden here to do a brief presentation as well, and then have a discussion with the city council.
Okay.
Thanks, Jordan. In the interest of time and in light of the fact that I gave you a very detailed, I think I gave you a very detailed staff report, and I trust that you went through that in detail, but I won't kind of regurgitate that, but kind of give you a high level summary. And we also have the garden, Sisters Garden Club here, representatives. I'm sure that they would like to make a few comments, and I'm sure you guys have some questions for them. So I want to reserve the bulk of the time for that kind of discourse. But just a high level kind of overview here is that we're looking for council feedback from council tonight. We've been engaging with the Sisters Garden Club at a staff level for off and on for about a year now, because they have informed us that they have to vacate the site that they're in currently. So we initially had them look at some private property options first, and they took some time to do that, and they came back and they felt that the city located on a city park was their best option. So we've been looking at a few different park locations for that, and each one of them has certain advantages and certain disadvantages, including Sun Ranch Park and Cliff Clemens Park. I won't go into the detail about kind of the advantages of each. I think I did that in the staff report, but we've been working with them. We've also ran it through the Parks Board several times to get their input, and knowing that the councils will have the final say on where it would go and if it would go on a city park. We wanted to get that we felt it was time to get your feedback on this, and then take that feedback and depending on which location it is, we know that public outreach is a factor here, and we'll want to spend some time doing that if one of these locations seems to be preferable. And just note that the park, there's support in this in the Parks Master Plan for community gardens. That was something that we heard from the community that they wanted to see, and there were different locations for doing that. And you know, there was also language in the city providing some support for that activity. So I think at this point, if you want, we could invite some representatives of the Garden Club to come up and make a few brief comments as to their goals and latest thinking, and open it up the dialogue for.
Sure. Please come up. Yeah, please talk into the microphone
Yes.
because
First
we
of
are
all,
recording this, so.
I wanted to clarify that it's not the Sisters Garden Club. It's a Sisters Community Garden. There's another nonprofit in town that's a garden club. That's not us.
Okay.
We're a community garden. We've been in gardening since 2006. I wanted to build a little bit on what Jennifer was talking about in terms of partnerships, because what we're proposing is a partnership between our nonprofit and the parks and the city to develop one of these park spaces into a beautiful garden like the one that we have that we need to leave. We think it's a pretty unique opportunity to partner right now, where we have to leave in a frame of about 9 months, I guess. This is the time to do it if we're going to do it. It's part of the parks plan. And we would be donating our gardening expertise, huge amounts of volunteer hours, garden building materials, plants, ongoing care and management of the proposed garden. This is essentially a donation from our nonprofit to the city and the parks for all to enjoy. We intend to seek grants to help pay for it, and we've already talked with some local granting agencies, and they have stressed to us that partnering with the other community members is what they want to see. It's what we want to see too. We want to be part of the bigger whole of the community and a place that we can stay. And there's a precedent for this, not just nationally, but locally in Bend. There's a couple of community gardens that are in the city of Bend parks. There's a Miller's Landing Park or garden, excuse me, in the Franklin's Corner Community Garden. So these are examples of nonprofit partnerships with civic entities that have worked well, that have enhanced park space, and that's what we are proposing to you. And I'm just gonna let Jane.
Will you state your name, please?
Yes, Karen Lord, Sisters. Thanks.
We got
Exhibits.
exhibit.
We're not-
Color glossy photos.
Analog.
Right there.
That looks good. You can hold the mic like this if you want to, if you need to stand in front of it.
I might need to. Hi,
Just grab it like this.
everybody. Is that stable? Okay. I'm Janie Boyle, and I'm glad to be here,
Yeah, there you go.
really close
Yeah.
to you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to just introduce myself as someone who's following up on my career path, which was architectural design and facilities planning. And now I'm a person in the garden who's doing the same thing. And it's now a physical project as well as a mental project. But we have been really glad to work with the Parks Advisory Board and the city staff recently, last year or so, to discuss the possibility of using park space for this beautiful garden. And we've been using information for the parks master plan for our programming needs, and also hearing from our gardeners and what they want to see and how they operate in the garden. So we've come up with several plans, and we keep modifying these plans based on input. So this is like the fourth round on this, and I just put a little color on it so you'd be more impressed. But the main thing that we want to reinforce here is that we do want to partner with the city, and we want to make it easy on the city to have this feature in the parks and offer it to the citizens of the community to either join as gardeners or to just enjoy learning from seeing what goes on in the garden, or visiting or having lunch there, or just wandering by. And we wanted to make the least amount of negative impact on anybody around, neighbors, other, dogs that want to run in the park, that kind of thing. So we've tried to take advantage of the space as best we could. So for example, at Cliff Clemens, this represents the whole park, where there's parking down here, there's the playground and the restrooms, and then there's a large field with grass, and it's irrigated, so it's green. And we thought, after 2 or 3 other choices, that the best way to keep a big open space would be to just wrap the end of the park, the west end, with the garden. And that allows more greenery, the possibility of shade trees being put into the program. I think most people would see that as an asset. We have yet to talk to the neighbors, and we want to do that. And we feel that that's the missing link on this programming need. So we would see possibility of having some community meetings where they're invited to see what our ideas are, and then we would take their ideas and merge all those things together and maybe have a design charrette period involved so they could feel integrated into the process. The other site that we're considering, or you all are considering, is over at Sun Ranch, excuse me, where the well is taking up the lot to the south. And then there's a radius of 100 feet from the wellhead, which is not buildable. So we've come up with this idea that we've drawn the radius and we're gardening north of that point. And it's pretty amazing that it came out looking so good, and it's possible to do the operation that we currently have there. There's not as much open space, but that's all right. And because there's this driveway aspect, we've created on this drawing just a turnaround, or just a loop driveway. And there's a drop-off place, so deliveries can be here for the amendments and things that would be stored. And we're gonna have some locks on things probably, but I think it'll still work out. We can have the porta potty over here where it's not gonna bother any neighbors. We've shown our current greenhouse along the east perimeter. It's pretty large. We might be able to modify the size or the shape or the height of it, or have a series of smaller greenhouses to do that function. So we're just waiting to have some interaction and get going on the next steps. So questions for me?
No, we probably should do the next part of the presentation and then we might do a whole round of questions. How's that sound?
Maybe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mimi Schaefer. I was going to tell you a little bit about myself. Mostly I moved here in 2017, but before that, I was IT and office manager for two Corvallis CPA firms from 1997 to 2014. I was a program developer and facilitator for a 1 week annual summer program at Mount Angel Abbey for families for 25 years. I'm a lifetime gardener, born and raised in Portland, lived in the heart of the valley for 40 years, and retired to Sisters in 2017, and happy to have the sunshine, and was delighted to find that the garden was here. I just want to talk a little bit about nonprofits in general. Karen mentioned them earlier. Nonprofits can have a wide range of relationships and experiences with their public partners, depending on the ability and resources of the city and the condition of the park and surrounding communities. Those 4 parts we have to take into consideration all the time. These groups help park departments with education, programming, and volunteers. They can advocate for increased funding for park improvements and expansions. These organizations typically operate on a voluntary basis with a few, if any, paid staff, and do not have any responsibility for the park itself, just what they're doing within the park. The Sisters Community Garden was originally came from the Sisters Vision Project in 2006. In 2010, the Sisters Community Garden became a community partner project of SPRD. When the land that the garden used was no longer available, the Sisters Community Advisory Committee found a new home donated and approved in large part by Marvin Benson and the Eagle Air Airport. The Sisters Community Garden was then filed and received nonprofit status in 2014. So we are a nonprofit. Like we were saying, we're looking for some way to work with our program in the city development part, in developing the city parks. Let's see, if the Sisters Community Garden is able to move to city parkland, we look forward to crafting a memorandum of understanding that develops and outlines a partnership and use agreement or renewable lease agreement developed both by the city of Sisters and the garden itself. Some of the qualities of that agreement would be making sure that we're ADA compliant, making sure that we can hear from what the city has to say, what they want their parks to look like. Do they want a cyclone fence? Could we do something different? In return for the use of city land, we will maintain the garden as we do now. We'll maintain the fenced area, and we request that the city provide utilities to a central location on either one of these premises. We'd have to have electricity and water to the site up here, and the same here, and the same here. There is electricity and water here, but it would have to be to our site particularly, especially if we use the greenhouse. So we'd ask the city if they could help us with that. Let's see, after estimating certain current utility costs, any costs due to the new use of the land could be calculated and agreed upon, and adjustments would be made in each year. So we'd know what you had currently, and then we'd figure out what the difference is when we get there, and we can negotiate that, as well as any other things that come up with cost and usage. Let's see. Community outreach and gathering citizens' feedback. In your packet, you have a preliminary draft of the survey that we produced in May. It had like 18 questions and answers that we brainstormed and put together for the residents in both, in the neighbors in both Sun Ranch and the neighbors for Cliff Clemens Park, and contacted both the homeowners, the leaders of the homeowners associations in both those areas, and said, well, can we do this? How would you like to do this? And so then we thought we'd do it in April, but there was some misunderstanding, and we thought, well, maybe we'd have to wait until after this meeting to do that survey. But you do have a copy of that survey in the notes, that the packet that Scott had presented to you at that time. Just as part of the memorandum, you've seen the memorandum with SPRD. I have copies of the memorandums that are used in Bend for Hollins Head and Miller's Landing. So if you want to take a look at what exactly they look at, they're quite detailed. And the ones from SPRD from 2010, 2006 are extremely difficult. And you can see why it was hard for them to maintain it. It was a new thing, but it's not a new thing anymore. And we're looking forward to getting a site so we can begin to work. We've noticed this year, because we haven't had any good opportunities to do anything within the city because we've been so focused on getting a place. But community outreach is something that we're doing. We do it at the farmer's market. We do it in Thanksgiving for all the people that we have. And we want to be able to grow. Sisters community is growing. And so we have come up with the fact that Clemens Park has a lot of land. We have a lot of airspace in that design. We like that for that reason. And there's no reason why we can't keep some of the community areas well taken care of and shade provided, some of the goals that are that you have for the park plan in Clemens Park particularly. So I think the feedback is the thing we're working on right now. It's been shown that sometimes door to door is a little bit better than a group meeting because people are more honest. But so if I'd invite you to take a look at that survey, if you have any comments on it too, we'd like to hear that. Anyway, thank you for hearing from us. Any questions here?
Yeah, we're going to have questions, and I think everybody's going to have at least one, right? So,
Have at least one or two.
yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can come up and sit and answer up there.
Yeah. Let's do this 1, 2, 3.
We don't want to hear Scott anyway.
I think we've heard a lot from him this last year. It's been a okay, good conversation. One second. Yeah.
My first one is to staff. What are we looking at to provide the infrastructure that would be needed to have the community park?
Well, it differs based,
Community garden in the park?
I guess it differs based on what site you're talking about. Obviously, the Cliff Clemens has built-in infrastructure that's probably much more available and ready to adapt to accommodating the garden, because you have parking there, you have restroom, you have power, you have water. The Sun Ranch Park obviously doesn't have parking, it doesn't have restrooms. There is availability of water and power, but I understand that there would be some need to extend those services some distances that will come with a cost. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
And that is something that we would bear in this proposal?
Well, we've kind of haven't gotten to the details of who's responsible for what yet. because we haven't settled on a site. So once we can settle on a site, we can probably do a little bit more in-depth analysis on what the costs are and what they are asking the city to fund and what they'll fund. So that's
And-
not a very detailed answer for you, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, so it's, no, we're not quite there yet. Okay.
I have a comment about that. You know, you guys, part of what you're here is for us to pick a site, but honestly, because the outreach portion hasn't been fully formed, I have no idea which site I would choose today, and it couldn't.
Yep.
And I kind of wouldn't. I definitely would want to go through a process where I could hear from members of the community that are closer to each site. Obviously Grand Peaks, that north property line, if I'm not mistaken, that's right on the other side of that is our homes, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
30-foot easement.
yeah, and then, you know, and the other one's smack dab in front of a bunch of other homes and then apartments on the other side, right? So, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just what it is, right? So, I just wanted to kind of make that comment that utilities is important, you know, MOUs, those are important, all that stuff. But as far as picking a site, I couldn't be there yet. Anyway, so, and I don't have any particular questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and let, other people ask questions.
Yeah, I became aware that there's a 30-foot easement that you're going to need to consider in your design on the north side of the design for the sun. Thank you. Yeah. That those properties that are on the top end there, they have an easement of 30 feet from their property line. Oh, sorry, 3 feet. Okay. And it's there?
Janie, can you speak for that?
Not aware of it.
Is it
Okay.
3 feet or 30 feet?
I'm sorry, that was my mistake. It's 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you. And then on the lighting, is it lighting or electricity? Turn on the other mic, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There you
It's
go.
on.
Is the electricity this is my question.
We need electricity simply to run the irrigation system
Okay,
timer. And also if we have the greenhouse, we need to have fans running for the greenhouse. We
Okay.
also have been considering some other possible things like the security monitor or something like that. We'll probably have a locked gate from dawn to dusk. I mean, you know, when is
Mhm.
reverse?
Yeah.
dusk to dawn.
And
Yeah.
That might be just battery operated or it might be powered up.
But
Okay,
power itself is a minimal component of expenses.
great, thank you.
We heard from Paul Britannia on these issues and he did.
The lighting issues?
About the
Yeah.
electricity and
Uh-huh.
also the water. He didn't think the water was a big deal because it's just a matter of digging the trench. And the electricity was a little bit more difficult because it's three-phase power that's over there on the well site, and they would have to jump that down to single phase.
Thank you.
And I would add, as far as water usage goes, they're already watering Cliff Clemens Park.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of substituting one form of watering for another.
Thank you.
So, I'm the stick in the mud here. First of all, the Parks Board was split evenly on this. I think that, I asked to see the design you have here and I appreciate it. That is much more palatable to me than the other ones in terms of Cliff Clemens. But I think that there's a larger issue and I want to address it now before we get too far down this path. And this is me, the rest of the board may not feel, the council may not feel this way. The city property paid for with city SDCs, city taxpayers, and yet we're talking this as being open to all members of the Sisters community and area, and that's fine. But I think that it's incumbent upon us as a council to ensure that our citizens have every opportunity to utilize this. And part of the structure in the documents that were provided to us about talking how sites would be assigned placed city residents who didn't have a site behind county residents who did. And I think that's going to be tricky. We're gonna have to talk about that as we put
Can I,
together.
can I speak to
No,
that?
no,
Sorry.
I'm gonna finish
Okay.
before we finish these things. So I don't think it's unfixable, and I don't think it means that folks that are currently gardening, because you're adding more sites, wouldn't be able to, but I think we're gonna have to talk about how sites are prioritized and what dates those priorities drop away
Mhm.
so that others have opportunity. And I wouldn't vote for anything that didn't give first and second priority to the citizens of the community that are paying for the amenity that is there. Um, And so I just want to be upfront about it, so you know, I mean, it's nothing to do with anybody. I believe in the gardens, but the reality is we're moving it from private property to city property, and it's developed city property. And some of that has been paid for through SDCs and other things. We just need to be really careful that we don't set a precedent for other things that come down the pike and occur. And so that's where I am on this. And so as you think about moving forward and talking to the city, be aware that's in the back of my mind. But the design, as you've shown it to me, is palatable to him. And I think it would be probably to most of the Parks Advisory Board.
I wanted to comment on the prioritization of the city residents, because we've had this discussion internally, and what you reviewed in your documents are existing bylaws that are fairly boilerplate and not very current. And we fully understand what you're talking about as far as giving city residents first options for the sites. But I would turn you to the conversation that was held a little while ago about the pickleball courts, where the pickleball players are not necessarily being restricted to the city of Sisters, I don't believe. And the pickleball club was getting certain hours restricted where they were going to be able to use it. So it's sort of similar.
No, not in my mind at all. The SPRD is a special taxing district. It taxes outside the sister city limits,
Mhm.
which is most of Sisters country.
Mhm.
And those fields are being paid for, the funds for those fields are being paid for by the pickleball group as well as SPRD tax structure, where our tax structure is bounded by the
Mhm.
city limits. And so having been on a special board district for 15 years, I know how they work.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate the comment, but to me, it's not applicable in this situation.
I think we're totally open to giving city residents first priority.
Okay.
And got anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, good point, Gary, thank you. Question for staff and then a question for the ladies. Do we have anything similar to this right now? Do we have an entity operating on city land that has an agreement? What's, liability, yada, yada? 'Cause it doesn't necessarily have to be like
Land, I
parkland, it can
I-
it can just
yeah,
be
I
city
mean,
land. I mean, we have
not a.
cell towers.
We have, well, yeah, cell towers as a
That's a
private
lease.
entity leasing
Yeah.
on city property. And then the Main Street building is a new, agreement. Um, and it's shorter time frame than probably what we would, be looking at for a community garden space. It takes some investment to make changes to, public lands. You have any others? Like I said, this model, it does exist in other communities. I mean, you heard some examples given about Bend and there's certainly others. There's also models where cities actually, if they have a recreation function, which just heard from our partner that we don't, that we have a special district that does that, but would do all the management of plots and reservations and collecting fees and all that stuff. This would be more of we would have a contract basically for them to operate the space on city land. And that you can lay out the provisions, stipulations that we would want to see if we were going to lease land to a nonprofit.
Okay. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to say was that, I guess it was a comment more than the question was, is that me?
I don't know.
Um, that, housing is a big concern, obviously our top concern. And so we are doing, mitigations and actively pursuing, solutions to that. And some of that includes, like we did in the last year, reducing lot size requirements, in certain like residential areas. And as a city, we have to understand that when we do that, people are giving up the ability to more or less have a yard. And I think it is our responsibility to fill that gap, whether open space, recreationally, whatever. So, this, totally makes sense to me. And, devil's in the details, obviously, and I think, we agree there's a couple pieces of homework left to do. But I think that this is something that our city should be leaning into, because, we're bizarre situation. We have a Parks and Rec district, but they don't have any parks, but they're getting there now. Or they're gonna get some land. And we're the holder of a lot of the parks. So, um, and yeah, so I'm excited about it. I mean, you're a longstanding organization. I don't hear of any I don't hear of anybody growing fentanyl or anything out there. I think you're
Darn.
pretty safe. And especially I think, yeah, I mean, I can't speak yet to as a preference, but obviously the closer this amenity is to more dense housing, the better. Uh, especially when, the dense housing can mean little to zero ability to grow anything. And I mean, I know walking around my neighborhood with my son, we ogle other people's yards, or gardens that are within sight, and he enjoys that. And I've never been out to your location, which is ridiculous, but partially because it's really isolated, and I think that having it more accessible and embraced as a community amenity, I think would bring a lot of value to our community. So, but yeah, like I said, I know there's still more homework, but that's kind of where I land on it. Density comes with trade-offs and responsibilities, and I think this is one of those, it checks one of those boxes.
Okay, go ahead.
I did my own kind of little survey since we hadn't had an opportunity to do anything larger yet. And when I approached people and said, what do you think about having a community garden closer into town, maybe in one of the park areas, and it's kind of in our master plan, and to do that and stuff, people will, well, yeah, those community gardens that's important. That's good stuff. If I approached them and said, if we dedicated some land in one of our city parks to a private nonprofit who would provide an area for people to have their garden spot, and there would be a limited number of paid people and lots in a gated area that no one but the people who were invited in or were paying to get into that spot, would you be in favor of having that on a city park? Well, no, on no uncertain terms, they would not. I have property that has a small backyard. I'm very lucky that my homeowners association has a beautiful green area right behind that, where I see turkeys and pheasants and deer and dogs and kids playing on a regular basis. My homeowners dues goes towards the upkeep of that property. If our homeowners association was going to say, we're going to provide that land for a small group of people to be able to pay to be involved in something that's going to take place right there, and you can apply if you choose to do so, but it might not be something that I care about. Would I be happy about that? No, I would be very, very unhappy about that. So I will be looking forward to seeing, because one of the people I talked to was right on the edge of Cliff Clemens Park, and whose kids play in that park. And the stickler seemed to be, if I can't do, I don't know, making this exclusive group, putting a fence around it, locking people out. And we're a growing community. I was not happy to hear that you feel like it's the area for it is going to possibly need to grow with the community that would be taking our precious parkland, which we do not have enough, and dedicating it to something that the community loves, but only a small amount of people can actually take advantage of. And I don't see our parks as that.
Mhm.
So I'm not closing down the whole idea because I haven't seen the survey results. I think the plans and everything are gorgeous. I just don't think a city park is the place for it. So I have to be convinced. So
I have,
just showing you what
Yeah, I think
what
it,
the issues are.
yeah, and the matter, I'm gonna kind of be a time hawk too, because we have another piece of the workshop that we need. Eric, how much time you need?
We'll give.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of want to wrap things up. Do you have any more comments or
I'll
questions?
be quick.
Okay.
Okay. I would, number one, I agree totally that we definitely need the survey results. And when you send the survey, you should definitely have the images with it, the design. But I think it'd be interesting to find out if, SSD 6, the school district, would be interested in having a park close to the school, gets the children involved. They have a lot of space. And that's my only other thought.
We have contacted
Oh,
them and
okay.
made inquiries.
Okay.
In the very beginning. and just last weekend
Oh,
and stuff. So if, I just would like to ask the question of the council. The reason that we didn't send out the survey during the month of April was we weren't sure about what sites were available.
Yeah.
And we have a whole, you can see it, there's a fact sheet and a survey already developed, question and answers. And I'm just wondering what you think is the most, you've done, SPRD's had meetings. We were wanting to have instead of going knocking on the doors of all these people, we were thinking about having a meeting maybe here or at the firehouse or something. And polling the people that came, advertise it for a while and say, if you're in Cliff Clemens or Sun Ranch area, is that a good idea? Or is it better, do you think, to get really good input by really knocking on the door? I just was
I
wondering,
think we
because
should
you
have it in Clemens Park,
have it there.
in the park.
In the
yeah.
park.
And then, kind of mark off the area that it would be
Oh.
in and the drawing
Yeah.
of the thing and you get signs so people driving by would go, oh, they're doing something in the park.
Okay, okay.
I think that would be brilliant. And then, showing what the other park area was as well, but
Mhm.
there aren't nearly as many people, I think, that live. They back up to it, but they don't necessarily overlook it. I don't know, maybe I'm.
But well, yeah, we have had a couple public comments from
Those two, yeah.
Grand Peaks, and
maybe-
none that I know of from Cliff Clemens Park area as of yet.
There was,
Does,
there was
there
one.
was one? Okay. But that, we don't base everything on that. And we don't base everything on, we got to get the whole ball of wax.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't think, nobody said no, absolutely no. I think there's just a little more work to do. I know that we, as counselors, Counselor Letts Sunday was doing something about housing on Sunday and Counselor Cobb was there as well. We're in a lot of discussions and we don't mind helping out and showing up and, being there to say, if somebody says, hey, what's the city side? Well, I would say we're here to listen to you guys. So that's why we're here. So we would definitely be supportive if you wanted to have something at the park or even the fire hall or whatever you decide to do. I think that you would get support from us because we want to learn more about it as well.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think we really want to reiterate that we are looking for a partnership, not like a thing with the doors closed and a gate on it. We're talking about having the gates open during the daytime hours so that people can come in and look at the garden and learn about plants. If we're modifying the way we do our plot entry to give priority to city residents, really the only restriction is the first city residents that apply
Yeah.
ones that get it because there's a limited number of beds. So in no way are we feeling exclusive about it
Yeah.
or giving any priority to existing gardeners like myself who aren't in the city limits.
Yeah.
I think this is a real, we're proposing to do a lot of work that will enhance a park that will be your park forever.
Yeah, there's just still a lot to learn from
Absolutely.
us and from you guys too
Yeah.
during the process. So,
And
I-
yeah, it would be behoove everybody to go out and see the existing park to have some idea.
Yeah, I think, work with staff about maybe doing a little bit of public outreach.
How much it would cost the city to implement such a.
And I also would encourage to go out and look at different times of the day and on weekends and stuff. That park gets used more than people think. Doesn't mean that this can't fit in and work in, but Clemens, but I think there's been an awful lot of rumor going around that the park isn't used heavily, and that is very inaccurate.
What
So-
about the Sun Ranch parcel? I mean, is there a plan for that or
Yeah,
or
it's up
no,
there.
no. The city and our city parks plan.
The pollinator park,
Pollinator park.
idea stuff.
That was just kind of a high level idea.
Yeah, part
I
of
know
the,
it's a funkier piece of property.
part of the issue with the property, in looking at it, when we looked at it from a park perspective way back when, is that because part of it's in the airport exclusion zone, that means you can't like put a playground in some parts of it. It's difficult
Yeah.
with the well and everything else.
Yeah.
There might be more of that park available, I think, and I'm speaking off the top of my head, and Paul, you can throw something at me. To do some things with, if we weren't looking at agriculture and those sorts of things in terms of the well. But I know we have to protect the well, and that's the most important thing that we have there, so.
Yeah.
But, and I know that, that there is some resistance to Sun Ranch, but I also believe that it is a viable place to look at. I think the costs are gonna be significantly higher.
I think we just have homework to do on both sides,
Yes.
So, but just, keep contact with staff and, if you need council to show up for something, I do that a lot and others do too. So, sound good? All right. Thank you for coming. All right.
Sorry, Eric.
That's all right. We can go along. We don't want to rush Eric to, he gets to say 3 words and you want to tee him up, Jordan?
The next man needs no introduction. No. Eric Strobel, our area manager, Sisters Economic Development, part of EDCO, is here to give the council an update on activities. He has been busy this last year, reformed the advisory board for the Sisters Country Economic Development Advisory Board. Councilor Letts sits on that board. He's worked on a new strategic plan for the next 3 years, and I think that's a big part of his presentation today, is kind of give you an update on that and some of those goals and projects and targets that EDCO is going to be working on for us.
Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Thanks for the opportunity to present the Sisters Country Economic Development Strategic Plan for 2024 to 2027. I'm going to just kind of skip the about EDCO piece, if you're okay with that, because I think everyone's pretty good.
Let's start grow.
Yeah.
There you go. And we'll go right to the meat. Is that coming up okay? Or did I
Yeah.
have to-
mhm.
Yeah.
A little low on the screen.
Yeah, it's low on the screen for some reason.
131, if you bring that down here.
Yeah. Tell me when.
That's good.
Pretty good there? Okay, great. So yeah, so you said it, move, start, grow. That's our kind of our motto. And so that's what we're doing here. The move goal, move 3 companies to Sisters with 15 well-paying jobs, 2 million in capital investment. I want to say that I got more aggressive on the start and grow piece of this and a little less so on the move. Just because, as we know, it's pretty tough to move a company with our housing. We've got some issues there. I was trying to be pretty conservative on new companies coming in. And our board really was interested in kind of helping from within with starting new entrepreneurships and growing what we already have. So just say that. So start 5 local scalable early stage companies that will generate 10 jobs and raise $1 million in capital. Again, jobs for an entrepreneur early stage company are going to be pretty small, and that's already showing. A couple new companies that just came into Sisters are really owner operated without employees. They may eventually have employees, but both of them are not really interested in that. So I see more of that happening. So the jobs piece on start, I was pretty conservative as well. And then the grow, we'll have 4 million in capital investment and 30 well-paying jobs. We've got, personalized nutrients, metabolic maintenance are both doing expansions. So, they're going to be adding jobs. They're growing. Sisters Meat Smokehouse, another one that will probably be happening in the next 2 to 3 years. So I think we'll do really well on that side. Any questions there?
Well, I want to comment. I hope you're successful with the school district as well on the internship programs.
Yes.
That's a key component for those youth that are not heading towards regular
Absolutely.
four-year college or university.
Yeah, thank you for putting that in there.
And those are the people that keep the town running.
Right. And we are working on that for the 24-25 school year. Yep. And table setting, expand and improve community resources that benefit business. I'm not going to go into all the objectives, but obviously daycare, workforce housing, that is obviously not a Sisters workforce housing.
I was gonna ask exactly that.
Right. Well, I reached, I know that Habitat and NHA, that they're not quite ready to let out, drawings and conceptuals yet. So when they do, I will ask if I can use that instead, because I would want a local picture for sure. UGB expansion, I'll be involved with that. Scott's already wrapped me into it, which is great. The Sisters Makers development, as we know, is really exciting. And I see some, possible traded sector, small companies coming out of that. We've talked to COCC and Small Business Development Center to have a presence at the makers. So there's business education as well as classes on making things. So anyone who's interested in starting a business with what they're making or growing or producing will have some support, because we don't have that right now. And that Sisters Makers is going to create that hub for entrepreneurs and people that want to start business. And so we'll have a well-rounded offering of classes for them. So I'm really excited about that. Retail availability of food. I mean, I hear it every day. We don't have enough options. So I'm working on that. It's not like a first priority, but I'm working on it because it's a community need for sure. And then some new development, 40,000 square feet of light industrial, and much of that being small, 500 to 1,500 square feet for those small companies that will be incubating out of Sisters Makers and going right into a space. And we Scott from Explore Sisters and I have talked about a makers tour. That might change a little bit with the makers being in kind of one area. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that morphs. And then membership, want to add 20 new members to the local program.
Wow.
That picture is from the roundtable a couple weeks ago. Thank you, Councilor Letts, for coming to that. Appreciate it. And I've got some board assistance on that membership push. And then we took the Sisters Guiding Principles actually comes from the former strategic plan. Our board really liked it and used it because I think economic development in Sisters is just different. It's thinks more about community. It's more, pardon the words, holistic and maybe organic and feel, more feeling than other areas. That's how I feel about it. And we're always thinking about the community and not just getting smokestacks in. We want businesses that fit and will like it here, and the community will like them being here. So that's a big push. And that says it in the vision, a resilient future where economic prosperity harmonizes with our natural surroundings, heritage, quality of life. I love that. And I do want to do a shout out to the board, which is Tim Kazar, local realtor, Counselor Letts is the city's representative. Shannon Thorson from Sisters Makers, who you've met and know. Commissioner Patty Adair is the county representative on the board. We just added Amelia Morton from Space and Common Gallery. We wanted some art representation on the board. And then we have Mark Madron from Mid Oregon Credit Union wanted some finance representation too. And so we need to get a large company representative. We lost our large company representative, so I'm recruiting in that area right now because we need to hear from them on employment workforce, that they're important piece of that. So, and I don't know who that clean cut guy is down there. Yeah, I moved to Sisters and this is what happened.
It's a plague.
It's colder here. It's colder. You need
You're
you need the
right.
fur.
So that's fast, I know, but any questions there?
I'm real happy with the work that you're doing, and I apologize that we've kind of given you the bum's rush tonight. There was an awful lot on the agenda. I think we do that too often. But it doesn't mean that we don't think what you do is important, because I'll tell you what, I believe it's really important.
Appreciate
here.
that.
Yeah. And how's the board going from your perspective?
Good when I remember to show up. It's like the one meeting I struggle with. No, I've been better. Good. I mean, yeah, we've had, membership has been a little
Yep.
up and down. So, but yeah, I think it's nice and small and
Headed in the right direction.
head in the right direction and good enough that it's a small town, so it doesn't take a lot of people to know what's going on
Right.
when you get them in one room.
Yep. All right. You got any questions or anything?
We-
No, go ahead.
We currently meet monthly, but we're actually thinking about doing every other month, just because we wanted to build a strategic plan and get that done. And we'll see if it might be enough to meet, because as you said, Counselor Letts, we all see each other in other meetings, and it's pretty easy to reach out if there's a question or we need to do something. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think it's probably not a terrible idea, right? I mean, you don't want to overmeet because then everybody's going, man, this is a drain too. So you don't want to
But we
tire
are
people out.
bringing speakers in as well, which I think is an important part for the board to hear from, Habitat and all different kinds of organizations.
COCC or, whoever,
An education piece.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just say, it's a pleasure to work with Eric. We do appreciate, he's got his ear to the ground. He's got great connections in the community. He's doing a great job of being out there, from organizing the lunches and participating with the pub talks and organizing those in town. That's a good, important thing to have in a city like this, where we do focus a lot on sort of the retail and tourism, but we have a big traded sector. We have an employment base here that we can continue to grow and support. And so having somebody on contract like Eric to be out there, takes a load off the staff for one thing. He's a professional, he's an expert in the field. And then he, keeps us in the know, and then connects with staff to build it. Then we can come to the table with things that we can do and help facilitate businesses to either recruit or retrain and grow them here. So thanks, Eric.
Yeah. And thanks for keeping the livability. It's right in the vision, in the strategic plan. It didn't say the word livability, but it said, it showcased it, you know what I mean? So, because everything we do is livability. So thank you for doing that.
Hey, Pub Talk, July 25th in Sisters at the Sisters Makers. So put that on your calendar.
All right. I'll do my best. All right. We're going to go ahead and close this meeting, and we're going to start at 6.
Recording in progress.
All right. I'd like to call to order the May 8th regular city council meeting. It's 6:46 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up is roll call. Rebecca?
Mayor Preden,
I am present.
Council President Blum,
Here.
Councilor Letts.
Here.
Councilor Ross.
Here.
Councilor Cobb.
Present.
All right, I like that. Next up is the approval of the agenda.
I would move approval of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything to talk about? No? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? Okay. Next up is visitor communication. Do we have some signups?
Yes, I have three. First is Linda White.
So thank you for this opportunity to share my, or 3 minutes of my impressions about what's going on in our neighborhood.
Can you bring it closer, please? Thank you.
Is it on?
Yeah,
Can you hear
that's
me
better.
now? All right.
Yeah.
And name
Good.
and address.
I live at
Name and
511
address.
East Diamond Peak Avenue in Sisters. That's lot number 31. So adjacent to the pump house or well number 4. I'm the first property beyond the park there in Grand Peaks neighborhood. So there were some comments that I wanted to add. First of all, we didn't receive any letter or notice that anything was going to be done with that property. The only thing that I knew when we moved in was that it had been approved for a pollination garden, which I have the plans for here, and apparently it had come to council in 2018. So that was my understanding. If anything was going to happen there, it was going to be this pollination garden that had been designed and approved. So after looking at the plans for the garden that the community garden has proposed for our property, it doesn't take into account the 3-foot space that belongs to the HOA property behind the fence line on the south side of the Diamond Peak development, nor does it really delineate the property that abuts Camp Post Road and Sun Ranch Road, which is deeded over to the HOA and goes behind the private park and would abut up against any garden area there. And I think, and according to the new rendition of how they locate things on the property, that would be where porta potties and greenhouse would be located. Now, there is a height restriction in that area because of the approach to the airport. So all of those things would need to be taken into account. So the people whose property abut the proposed garden have privacy concerns about the influx of numbers of people, the proximity to our property lines, the traffic noise, the appearance of structures, and the view impingement. Along that property line, along the south fence, there are evergreen trees that are in that property design, and it would obscure the views from most of those properties. All of the proposed having a temporary structure like a porta potty, I think a number of the neighbors that I've talked to, this is also not something that we would like to have in our backyard. So that, the traffic, the noise, the appearance, the height of proposed structures, and the proximity to the living spaces of everybody's properties who would face onto the garden areas is problematic. In walking around, the Cliff Clemens Park has more space around it, so residents wouldn't be confronted to the same degree that those of us who live in Grand Peaks would be. And that would be, it also has a structure, it has the potties there, it has the electricity, it has everything that's already there and ready to go. Those things would not be added in. So in terms of having a garden that's then accessible to the majority of the community, that park seems to be already utilized in that way, and this would be another amendment. So having a community garden, I think, is a wonderful thing. I'm just not sure that having it next to the pump house, given the proximity of a lot of the structures to the existing homes, I think that would be, so my comments,
Thank you so much.
yes.
We appreciate you coming here tonight.
We have Michael.
Good evening.
So I noticed the Waterwise gardening pamphlets out there. And it reminds me, it was about 2 years ago, I saw an article about Salt Lake in Utah. And they had a picture of a suburb, newly built suburb for the most part, a few years old, and a picture of a man standing in front of his house who had been cited by the neighborhood association for deciding not to water the landscape that had been put in with the house while the lake keeps shrinking and the salt gets higher level, the brine dies, and anything left for a bird migrations of millions of so many species that have been around millions of years before people were even on this planet. And it's just amazing. I actually live with all this. It's just in it's everywhere. On the opinion page in your local newspaper one Wednesday ago, there's a title, quote, "Country deserves better than Trump," unquote. What kind of news is that? Is not this subject written about countless times a day? Isn't it known as meaningless yet? A worthy subject title would be, quote, "This country is far, 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 far worse than a narcissist from New York City," unquote. So far worse, he's still smearing bleep in your faces, which he should be applauded for, until you can get up every morning, truly recognizing through your whole being what I just said here. And aside from that, you know what I'm looking for, and I'm still waiting. And the Sheriff Department has my P.O. box, which shouldn't be breaking protocol when it's a serious subject as it is. That'd be the humanitarian thing to do. Yep.
Thank you, Michael.
And finally, we have Peter Hoover, Habitat.
Good evening, Mayor Preeden, members of the council. Peter Hoover, Sisters Habitat for Humanity, 382 East Hood Avenue here in Sisters. 3 quick items for you this evening. First, a thank you. Thank you to Councilor Lutz and to your staff member, Emmy Shoup, for participating as forum members for the affordable housing meeting that occurred this past Sunday. A lot of great information, well over 100 people in attendance. We had other people from the council who are in the audience, but I want to in particular point out Councilor Lutz and Planner Shoup for their participation on the panel. I think that anyone who attended walked away with a much expanded understanding of the issues and the considerations that come into play with affordable housing. Continuing the theme of thanks, I'd also like to thank the city for their letter of support once again that they provided when Habitat for Humanity applied for our Oregon Housing and Community Services grant recently. And to in particular point out Scott Woodford for his assistance in providing the plethora of information that had to be prepared and presented to OHCS for the environmental portion of our application. So thank you to him as well. Then I have some good news to share with you. We were successful in our OHCS grant. And so there was $3.8 million that we were granted for on a reimbursement basis for the construction of homes that we have shared with the council in the past. We are extremely excited about that. And then we also received 900,000 for construction of homes in Woodlands that will be at a 60% AMI or lower target market for, no one will be able to be an owner unless they are 60% or less area median income. So I believe many of you are aware, we have 2 more grants pending that we are optimistic as those additional grants decisions are reached. We're hoping that those will allow us to proceed with certainty on the areas we've identified to the council for the development. So my appreciation to all of you and to staff.
Good job. And just for the math, that's $4.7 million total for Little Sisters Habitat. Good job. All right. Thank you. All right. Next up is the consent agenda.
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any comments at all? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? No? Okay, good. All right, on to council business. Next up is a resolution 2024-07 amending STCs for water and wastewater. It's going to be a recurring theme. We have 4 public hearings coming up. This is number 1 of 4. So I'd like to open the public hearing and we'll get the staff report.
As Paul's adjusting the table there, this is like you mentioned, Mayor, the first of a few. We have the water and wastewater update, which you had a work session on. I believe that was in January, and then following this will be the Parks SDC. February. That is.
I think it's
Good.
So Paul will be giving the presentation as a staff report. Maybe shout instead of using the mic.
Okay.
We have Steve on the line.
Yes.
Steve, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So thank you, Gordon. We are here tonight to contemplate and conduct a public hearing on resolution 2024-07, a resolution amending the City of Sisters SDC charges and fees for water and wastewater. So I will give you a little bit of background on how we ended up here today. Largely due to the effort that we put in about a year ago, updating our water and wastewater master plans and our capital improvement plans associated with those. And when you do that, it actually, by state statute, recommends that you, or lays out a process for you to update your SDC rates as well. So rates were last updated and adopted by council in 2018, and they have been adjusted annually for inflation every year since then. We use the engineering news of record for our region to calculate the inflationary index costs. So the importance of keeping your SDCs up to date really goes back to your 2023-24 council goal of developing funding strategies for initiating the design and construction of our high priority infrastructure projects. Part of that funding strategy is your system development charges. And when you have new capital improvement plans and project lists, the portion of those projects that are eligible for SDC funds need to be updated. And with that, especially with the inflation that we've seen in the last 5 years, it was necessary to obviously increase the water and wastewater SDC rates. So tonight we are looking at going for a single family dwelling unit or an equivalent dwelling unit from $3,951 to $7,229 for our water SDC, and a more modest adjustment for wastewater, largely due to the newness of our system being constructed mostly in the early 2000s. We're going from $5,166 to $5,472. So after Jordan mentioned, we brought this to you in a workshop format with our consultant, Steve Donovan, back in late January. We did a 90-day public notice for this public hearing. And we didn't necessarily have to do that because we're not changing the actual methodology of how we calculate those SDCs. But we did feel that it was important to get 90 days out for the public to be noticed, be able to provide comments. To date, we've only received comments from Central Oregon Building Association. You've been issued those comments. You've had time to read them, deliberate, or contemplate, and tonight deliberate. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve if he has anything to add, and then Mayor, you can open your public hearing.
Okay. Steve?
Hi, great. Thank you very much, Mayor, councilors. This is a road that you've all walked together with us. You're all very familiar with the construction and the concept of SDCs. We did meet with you on January 24th to go over these numbers. The numbers have not changed since we initially presented them to you. They were also presented to your Public Works Advisory Committee on March 12th for the water and sewer. So there's been a robust distribution of this data, and the comments that we've received from COBA we have taken into account. So we suggest that you approve the resolution as written tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any questions of Paul yet, or do we want to take public comment? We'll take public comment, then I'll close the hearing, and then we'll do some discussion. Do we have public comment for this issue?
None in person. If there's anyone on Zoom who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand.
I think we have one.
We have one here.
Yeah, come on up. We turned that microphone off, if you wouldn't mind turning it back on. And please identify yourself so everybody knows who you are. Thank you, it's on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor. My name is Morgan Greenwood, Vice President of Government Affairs with Central Oregon Builders Association. As noted, we did submit a rather lengthy written comment, and so just wanted to contribute some additional comment on this issue this evening. So thank you very much for your time. I think I'll begin just by saying that as we heard even in the workshop this evening, housing affordability has become a full-blown community conversation. We have counselors participating in this conversation as it's held in venues outside of this building. That's a little bit unusual, and it's interesting to see this conversation expanding. I will say that doubling wastewater SDCs is a little bit eye-watering. This is certainly going to have an impact on how developers build their pro forma as they contemplate applying for development permits here in the city of Sisters. What I will note on a personal note is that I do find these conversations, this role, this obligation that I have in this role to be a little uncomfortable, because the implication is that I don't believe that these projects are valuable, or that I don't believe that they are necessary within the city of Sisters. That is not at all the case. I think that the fact that the City of Sisters is being proactive it's to be commended. We are aware of what happens when a city suffers from deferred maintenance, and these projects are definitely needed for the next 20 years of growth. However, I will emphasize that as it currently stands, the city does not have the land supply for 20 years of growth. And so as we approach the UGB expansion process, we will find that perhaps we aren't able to accommodate a UGB expansion, that we won't be able to get a UGB expansion for the required land supply. And from there's still the additional step of annexing that land into city limits and ensuring that it does become dependent upon city utilities. So because we still have a fairly lengthy process ahead of us before we actually have the land supply to accommodate the amount of growth that is contemplated in this wastewater methodology update, I would request that the calculations reflect the current land supply and the amount of growth that can be accommodated within existing Sisters UGB at this time. That is the extent of my comments this evening, and I sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. It's going to be time for council discussions, so unless there's any more public. Okay. So I close this public hearing, the portion of the hearing, the public portion of the hearing, and now we're going to have council discussion. Does anybody have questions of Paul or Steve?
Just a clarification question based on the recent testimony referred to wastewater doubling. I think it's water that's doubling and not wastewater. Am I correct?
It's water and it's about 83%.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Mine, was that it? I want a little clarification based on the comments we just heard. Our work that we're having done is all within city's limits, is it not? Currently, the work that you're working on for water and waste, the projects that are coming up?
So our infrastructure, we do have infrastructure outside of the city limits.
Okay,
But is intended for only people that live inside the city.
thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
Give me a minute.
Do you have any
Come back to
questions?
When we hire a consultant to look at our rate structure, are the consultants, do they have any incentive to give us information that would allow us to overcharge? Or are they supposed to, I'm trying to see if there would be any incentive for this, our consultant to have given us information that would be not prudent for us to take advantage of right now. What would be their incentive to do that? Why should we not believe what they have proposed as a correct evaluation of the situation we're in?
Largely because we give them the information to analyze. All of the operational and capital needs comes from the city, which a lot of it comes from our master plans that are laid out and approved. So really Steve's job is primarily to analyze those numbers, run it through a spreadsheet, and the math is the math at the end of the day.
And
Jordan, got anything to?
Well, I'm happy to kind of chime in on the comment too, and in particular, like on the question about growth and the UGB expansion. You know, keep in mind SDCs are intended to be the mechanism for how growth pays for itself, especially in light that council is going to be increasing or is considering to increase utility rates on existing customers to help pay for infrastructure projects too. And keep in mind too, when we're looking at growth projections, it's not necessarily all on the assumption that we're expanding the UGB. It's also the fact that density could be added within city limits too. We're obligated by the state to plan for growth, whether that occurs within our city limits by going taller and denser or by expanding our UGB. Council's taken the strategy to take, approach that includes both expansion outward, but also up, to make more efficient use of our land. But any new development that's going to pay these system development charges are contributing towards projects in our master plan that are growth related. So by increasing the rates now, these projects that are being built are coming in for land use applications and going to build, connections to our water and wastewater system will be contributing towards the growth. And I think that's something that our existing customers would appreciate to hear, that we value that growth should pay for itself, as we expand and as we, grow more dense in our community.
You stole my thunder. That's okay. I think that I want to say that, first of all, if we hold off on building the infrastructure we need to build until the UGB is here and the growth is happening, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, not ahead of the 8 ball. And, talking about capacity, talking about another reservoir so we have redundancy in case of wildfire and those sorts of things. This is a significant issue, and we have to have the infrastructure in place when we're ready to move forward. Can't do it at the same time. And I know there's arguments for and against that, and I get it. And I understand the position of the Home Builders Association as well. But I think ultimately my position is to look at what's best for the city and what's best for what the state says we have to grow to. None of us want to grow that much, but the state says you've got to do it. So the best thing we can do now is to start building and planning and have everything ready to go and have the new construction pay for the capacity we have to have, whether it's a new sewer trunk line to handle additional waste or whether it's water, keeping water pressure up or whatever. I think we need to stay ahead of that. And we know we're going to have to do some debt in order to do all the things that we have. When we know my water rate's going to go up to do all the things we've got to do. So I think it's a reasonable, hard pill to swallow, but a reasonable pill to have to take.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I really appreciate the language of the concern that we are adding money to projects that we are hoping to be affordable. And that's the hardest part for me. It's definitely the hardest part for me. But at the same time, I don't see any way around it. You gotta, we have to plan way ahead of where we think we might even need to be. And one of the reasons that we have to do that is because there are a lot of communities out there that are looking to the state to borrow tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to do infrastructure. And so far, so good. We're going to need a little bit of help, but we're not looking for a big giant nugget from the state. You know what I mean?
We've been saving up.
Well, we've been doing it right for a number of years. People before me, staff were working on it way before I got here on this council, and it's not unreasonable. It's not always easy when you look at some of our affordable housing projects. That's the part that kind of hurts a little bit, but we need all the housing. We don't need just affordable housing. We don't need just big houses. We need everything in between. So, and this is kind of how we do it.
Yeah, I feel there's a catch-22 because, yeah, I mean, we're in a world of being nickel and dime to death right now. I mean, it's just, I'm gonna go crazy if I get another, it's like daily email, rates going up. I get it. But yeah, we've had this amazingly intense inflation and, but I think, yeah, I think there's a trade-off in that, the more robust we make our system now, even though that's at a pain point of some SDC charges down the road when, if we do expand the UGB and annex land and stuff, it's just, we're ready to go at that point. We're not playing catch up. And I think that's something I would imagine that any developer or builder would find very attractive. Nobody wants their project sidelined for
Because we don't have enough
years,
water.
because we don't have the water, the sewer capacity, and if they just wait 2 to 5 years, make it happen. So, I think there's a trade-off there. So, just say that if, we raise this, our coffers of more money, in theory, I mean, money is gonna be going out to pay for projects and stuff, but, does this put us in a better position, in theory, to be more liberal with exemptions and, proper times, of, certain projects, affordable housing or something like that, or is that like, well, I mean, yeah, what am I being clear?
I think I see, like, in terms of SDC waivers.
Yeah.
I think historically the city's, the philosophy or the approach has been to backfill, basically not impact SDC funds by going through the general fund or urban renewal
Okay.
as a source to kind of offset those costs for developers, but still keep us whole.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think we have any sort of projections built into these rates that assume that we'll be waiving or forgoing or
Sure.
delaying any
Yeah,
collections. Yeah.
I didn't think that.
And we're gonna be looking at these rates regularly.
Right.
And if we go into a situation like we did in 2008 and things change considerably, hopefully we will be able to review it and adjust and see what's necessary. I mean, it's not like as if this is set in stone for the next 20 years. We're going to be reviewing and looking at it and seeing how it's working as well.
We're
'Cause
gonna grade it
nobody
in
knows.
concrete to putting it out.
Yeah, and the good news is the idea of conserving the water, and that each individual has the opportunity in their home to conserve and reduce their rates. So that's really a big sign for me of goodness in what we're doing.
It would be on the utility rates for.
Oh, am I
kids
mixing
as
things up?
versus
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Charges. To Ms. Greenwood's comments about affordability, I think that is something that the council is highly aware of and we're concerned about. One of the things that we do on a regular basis is compare our rates and fees and our SDC charges to other communities. I know that that argument doesn't really go over well with a lot of developers when you explain that. But, Sisters is still relatively pretty affordable, especially in Central Oregon, as you add up all the costs and fees, building permits, SDCs, construction excise taxes and things like that. It still is more affordable to build here in Sisters. I think our other challenge is that we're running out of land supply. So in some ways, this is sort of a phased approach because we have some projects that are currently under construction or have additional lots that are platted to build on. But beyond that, we do have this UGB process that we have to go through with the annexation that we're looking at. Will take 2 to 4 to 5 years before we see any lands brought in that would be paying these higher SCC costs to accommodate the future growth.
And as a reminder, when do these go into effect if approved?
July 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings me to question is that, COBA did bring up the one option of phasing it in or anything like that. I mean, is there any upside or downside to that? Or I guess downside, would be the question for us, for staff. Are we feeling like, no, the money we start getting July 1st is money that we're spending and right now?
So we're all together, even if you include parks, we're looking at a $6,500 SDC increase going from about 13,000 to about 19,000. Doesn't sound like a lot. It is, when you're doing a big development, these things add up, obviously. But that's money that's being left on the table for projects that we have under design and engineering now that we're ready to go. The city's done a pretty good job historically of planning for capital projects and even cash funding, right? Especially wastewater, water, we don't carry a lot of debt. And one of the ways we've done that is to upgrade our SDCs, be able to have them in place so that when people come in and pull permits, that we are collecting that money to go directly into these projects. We have about 30 million coming over the next 5 years in water and wastewater. And so anything that we don't collect just puts us in a bigger hole. And where will you see that kind of balloon squeeze? Will be on utility rates. Or
There you go.
bigger loan or a bigger bond or something like that to pay for these projects.
Sure. Yeah. Bigger loan is not a great idea these days.
So.
My history with STCs over 50 years in a special district is that it's not a good strategy to phase. You need to do it when you're going to do it based upon what you have. And what you do is it's the proverbial kicking the can down the road, which means that the next STC increase will have to be even more significant because you didn't make up for it in the middle. And all those units that came online in that interim period have taken money off the table. You've got to find somewhere else. And so I personally would not be in favor of a phased approach.
I'm done.
I'm done.
I'm good.
Me too.
Probably could listen, take a motion.
I would move to approve and adopt Resolution 2024-07.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any final discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. There you go. Thank you. All right, next one, number 2, Resolution 2024-08, amending SDCs for parks. I'm gonna open the public hearing. Staff report. Come on up.
Paul's gonna sit and Scott's gonna stand here.
Okay,
You do have to turn on that.
you're off, so you gotta turn that one on. There you go.
No offense, Paul. So this is a resolution, Resolution 2024-08, amending the City of Sisters system development charges and fees for parks. It also relates to Resolution 2024-10, a resolution increasing the parks level of service ratio, because the parks SDC rates are based on, are contingent upon a increase in our level of service for parks over what it is currently. So technically, I guess that one should be, if it's going to be approved, should be approved just before the Resolution 2024-08. But both of these are outcomes of the recently adopted Parks Master Plan, which we adopted last year, which came up with a new capital improvement plan based on community input. And so similar to water and wastewater and updates to transportation plans, what the city typically does is takes a look at their rates for SDCs to help fund those capital improvement plans. So in this case, again, we retain the services of Donovan Enterprises to help us out with that. And he's prepared a report that was in your packet that outlines what the new recommended charges will be, which for a single family would take it from its current 1,193 up to 3,676 per single family dwelling unit. And in the report, it also provided a comparison of how our fees now compare to other communities in Central Oregon and how we compare with the increase as well. We work sessioned this with the council back in February, and we also reviewed this with the Parks Advisory Board to get their input on both the increase to the level of service and the Parks SDC rate increases. And they had some good discussion, but overall they were in support of both, increasing the SDCs and increasing the level of service, the parks level of service, which is how we evaluate whether we have enough park space in our community. It's a generally held formula. Communities, they differ in terms of how many acres per thousand that they utilize. But what we found out through the Parks Master Plan process was that we are on the low side for communities of our size. We're about 2 acres per thousand, and the recommendation of the Parks Master Plan was to increase it to 5 acres per thousand. And so 2 different resolutions tonight with 2 different requests, but they're both related in their request. So at this point, I guess I'd turn it over to either Paul or to Steve if they had anything that they wanted to add to this, to what I've already submitted here.
Steve, we'll kick it over to you.
Okay, thanks. I just want to point out that this system development charge fee is going to recover about $6.5 million of the master plan's $14.4 million 20-year capital improvement plan. So that means that there's another $7.8 million that has to come from other sources in the city. And I know we had a robust discussion about this with the advisory committee, and Councilor Ross was very attuned to this, that just because we're raising this SDC does not mean that we have adequate funding for our parks. And I want the council to be just clearly aware of that even with this SDC raise, there's still a funding deficit for park infrastructure over the next 20 years.
All right, Paul, you got anything to add to that?
No, I think, Steve, with his report and with the workshop that we did with you all. Let us know if you got any questions.
All right.
Steve or Paul, can you quickly clarify or confirm that we do not have a charge for parks SDCs on commercial development?
As part of this update, that is correct.
And that's a good point. I noticed in Ms. Greenwood's letter that she was requesting that we do not charge. There will be no charge to commercial or industrial lands under this. This will be completely to the residential customer class.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We got our staff report. Public comment? Does anyone want to say anything about the parks SDC? Okay. Come on up. This is the time. Thank you for being part of the process.
Good to see you all again. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
It's been a long time.
Let's see, COBA submitted a letter back in February with regard specifically to what exactly our current park inventory looks like in the city. Because the development code does require that master plans include 15% open space and as a condition of approval to build park amenities as well. So I appreciate that both your consultant and the council addressed that concern at your previous work session earlier in the spring. I would just note that as a matter of fairness, the developer is effectively paying for city parks twice when they allocate the land, build the amenities, and then pay the parks SDC per building permit for the home in the development. So should council contemplate a parks master plan amendment in the future, COBA would request that you consider such an adjustment. The adjustment to include these privately developed and privately maintained and yet publicly accessible parks as part of the city's park inventory. Largely, the concern is around the potential open air pavilion that is identified in the project list. Given that the methodology includes a level of service based on acreage, COBA does wonder how exactly this amenity is quantified by the acreage standard. Again, I'm in the uncomfortable position of arguing against an amenity that I know that the community is in support of, including my kids, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I am concerned that SDCs are not the adequate funding source for this specific project, particularly because an amenity of this magnitude is certainly going to function as a tourist attraction, or at the very least, an amenity that tourists utilize at least as much as current city residents are able to. In the event that the council elects to keep this project on the project list and does determine that it is SDC eligible, COBA would request that the allocation be readjusted to reflect how often, what quantity of usage the amenity would get by residents versus by projected usage by the tourist community. Finally, I think the point was very well made that growth is intended to pay for growth. And so to that end, again, an amenity of this size is not necessarily reflective of population growth at all. In fact, as previously stated, it's an amenity that our current residents have determined is a priority for them. It is not necessarily something that there's a population level that triggers the development of an open air pavilion. And so again, for that reason, because it is not a growth related or capacity increasing project, that an alternative source of funding be explored by council. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment possibly from, on Zoom?
If there are any participants who would like to speak, please raise your hand.
All right.
I see none.
Okay, I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing. On to council discussion and questions of staff.
Having served on the Park Advisory Board for a number of years and being involved in the sort of 30,000-foot elevation plan for that particular park. I want to point out that nothing is set in stone in there, and that a significant amount of that open landscape will be an amenity that will be open all the time to regular park users. It will be a park. There will be a building on the park, maybe, but it will be a park. And it's identified in our SDC list because, or in our excuse me, misspoken. It's identified in our project list because when you go out and look for money, for grants, for those sorts of things to do this, the first thing they want to know is it in your comp plan. So the fact that it's there, I don't think is a reason to change this SDC methodology at all. I think when the time comes to do it, that will be a robust and honest discussion of this council is what part of it is SDC related, if any, and what part of it is not. But, you know, it's not going up tomorrow.
Is that 10 million? Is that what the kind of our,
Kind of the number.
kind of
The
the,
total for the SDCs is 4.7 for that parcel.
That's correct.
I can help you with that. The total project cost is 10.3 million. 4.7 of it is SDC eligible. The balance, 5.7, has to be funded from other sources. So you will have skin in the game relative to existing users paying for that facility.
And I would
thank
argue
you,
that,
Steve.
yeah, that the SDC eligible components that we discussed are the amenities that are going to be out and around that pavilion as much as anything, whether it's pickleball court or whether it's park space to serve those neighborhoods over there that are underserved. So it was very clear to us that this was not going to be, we're going to have to find some real money to do this with in terms of grants and those sorts of things.
And like Steve said, it's 4.3 eligible.
Yep.
Again, the discussion will be
Yep.
down the road if we
Yep.
use
If we do
use it or not. I guess.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or anything?
So if we're going to have so much of a deficit, why did we land at this number? A deficit for overall, you know, dream park projects and things in the
7.8
parks plan,
million.
yeah. I mean, kind of a,
If these rates will not pay for everything on the list,
yes.
why didn't we increase the rates to pay for everything on the list?
You can't, you can only increase the rates for STC eligible
Eligible.
projects
Right.
Right.
or the portion of the project that's eligible. And
Okay.
realistically,
Got it.
the revenue from this fee increase is probably gonna serve debt if you're gonna pull the trigger on these large projects.
And the longer it goes on, the more expensive those projects are get. And
Yes.
the SDC eligible portion, does that get bigger as it goes along?
No?
That's what I'm
Nope.
saying. It's gonna get more expensive.
Well, and I think our biggest challenge, like everybody else, is going to be finding and purchasing property. And that doesn't get any cheaper.
Well, at least in this case, we have the, this.
Well, this
particular
property,
parcel.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
This
in
particular
general, the
parcel.
whole plan, yeah.
And I want to add that when you look at the NRPA, the National Parks and Recreation Association's level of service at 5, we're still at the bottom. I mean, so this is not a big increase where they would suggest a town of our both affluence and size would be. And so 5 was the number that was palatable to pretty much everybody that we thought we could maybe attain in the project list. And ironically, the higher we make that number, the fewer items become eligible for SDCs because you're serving your current population. So, you know, we would have been better off to have not raised the level of service. And then the SDC rates could have been even higher. So we're trying to be honest and reflect what we think this town needs in terms of level of service. If I had my way, would it have been higher? Yeah, but I heard a good reason why maybe it shouldn't have been. But I think that in the end, that's what your 20-year master, your 10-year master plan looks at. So what do you want to see for amenities down the road? And that it's your visioning and what's it going to cost to have that vision. And so raising the park's level of service to me is a no-brainer, should be higher, but it's a good place to start.
Okay.
I would move to approve and adopt resolution 2024-08.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any final discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, there you go. All right. Next up, resolution 2024-10, increasing parks level of service.
I move to approve resolution 24-10.
I second.
Vickers.
We didn't open the hearing though.
There's no hearing.
There's no hearing for
Oh.
this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Any discussion on it?
All those in favor first, right? Or no?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No, okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
All right, we still have another resolution, 2024-09, establishing a steering committee for UGB amendment.
Yeah, so one of the recommendations of the consultant, given their experience with other similar processes, is what is establishing a steering committee to help guide and advise the city and the council on the UGB amendment process. And so we're requesting council approval to form this committee. Basically, their role would be to review draft materials, assist with public engagement efforts, and just make key recommendations to the council. And we're recommending that it be a committee of about 14 people. It would consist of 2 city councilors, 2 planning commissioners, 2 city staff members, an appointed farm interest, 1 appointed forest interest, and then 6 community members at large that would hopefully have some technical background and ability to be able to help interpret and review technical material. It's not a prerequisite, but it's something that's a skill we would be looking for. And then just, you know, some folks in general who could provide a broad perspective to the process. If approved by council, we'll put out a notification to the community that this opportunity is available, and we'll give them about a little over 2 weeks to apply, and then we'll set up an interview committee if we get multiple ones, we'll have to set up an interview committee, and then looking to have the mayor appoint those folks at the June 12th meeting, and then their first meeting would be in the end of June, and there would be total of 4 steering committee meetings over the course of approximately 1.5 years. So it's a long commitment, but it's targeted moments of need to have their input. So that is what we're requesting approval of.
What if someone applies who could conceivably have a vested interest because they own property that could be considered in the expansion?
It's a good question. We think based on the potential size of the request, that there would, we actually think that input would be helpful through the process. And that's a question I asked our consultant is, would that look to be, or appear to be self-serving? And they said that, in some instances, it's really helpful to have that input on the committee, that the steps and the rules related to the process really are designed to be an objective process where the best lands through that filter and through that evaluation are the ones that kind of come to the top. And irrespective of somebody's influence on a committee. You know, if we had that landowner, input, we'd be hoping to have some maybe on both sides or different sides of the existing boundaries that could help inform that process. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
Good question.
You partially answered my question, but of the community members or, you know, the ones that aren't kind of official positions, I'm assuming they can be in or outside of the city?
There's a provision in there that a maximum of up to 3 community members could be outside of the existing Sisters boundary, but within the Sisters school district boundary.
Is that the community members or a total of the 14 there can only be 3?
Those would be just related to the community members.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 of 6.
Yeah.
And is there any value to have somebody from the county government?
Good question. In addition to these steering committee members, we would have what we call ex officio members. And we're looking at up to 8 to 10 of those. Can include Deschutes County, somebody from the county. It could include DLCD, fire district, school district. It's possible that the Forest Service would obviously be an influential voice in this process, given that they own a lot of the land adjacent to the community. So they could be potentially that forest interest that would actually be on the committee. But yeah, a wide variety of folks that would be able to not be voting members and not sitting at the table, but could impart their expertise when we need it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
On the question that President Blum asked, I know of a person that I suggested they might apply once this is confirmed, assuming it will be, who doesn't want the UGB expanded out into their property. So it's kind of the same question on the other side. So it sounds like you already answered that that's good to have both.
Yeah, we're looking for a diversity of viewpoints and ideas. So it would not be
That's smart.
I would not be a non-starter for somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions.
Shall I make a move?
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve resolution 2024-09.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any final discussion? I was thinking this might be a good point to say that if this process is 18 months, that the people from the city council might be the ones that are incumbent and aren't running for election. No
There should
offense,
be, yeah, I think
just for
continuity
continuity
is important.
and certainty about that. So
Yeah.
that would be Gary and I. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, and doesn't mean it couldn't change if we decided to shift gears after January. But I was just thinking that maybe just to start with, think about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would love to do it. I really would, but I'm not gonna be here next year and it's not gonna be finished next year. And
Right.
I think it's important that the steering committee especially be consistent in who's attending.
Right. And just for clarity, it was her thought that brought me to that. So,
It's your fault.
Yeah.
yeah, it's your fault. I have to
Leaking
do
and
more.
screwing everything up at the same time.
Anyway, that's just a thought. It's not, again, not written in stone or
Not-
anything like
it's-
that.
You didn't
Well,
put it and inscribe it in cement or anything like that?
if anybody has other thoughts, just let us know. You know, we have another month or so to figure all that out. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Easy peasy, lemon.
Thank you.
squeezy. Thank you.
Just figured we'd have to apply and Scott would decide who was the smartest of
Yeah.
this.
Oh, wow. I would never get on anything then.
Sophie,
wouldn't either.
Sophie's choice.
All right, we're moving on to other
Little more.
business. Assistant City Manager Carrie Prosser is going to talk about the US 20 at Locust Street Roundabout Art Process Review.
And the rearing bulldozer.
Councilor Ross did have an idea today about best putting a rearing bulldozer in the roundabout.
Since we have
Calling
the,
it good,
the,
How do you bronze it?
right? Well, it's
the
steel.
the biggest, littlest roundabout in the state of Oregon, however it is, so.
Right. So I'm here tonight to council to get some direction on moving forward with procurement for art at US 20 Locust Roundabout. Some history on this. The last time we did this process, we had never done it before. It was the first art piece that was ever put on a roundabout on a state highway. And so now there's plenty of art across the state, but there's been some changes to potentially how long it takes and some different qualifications from ODOT that we have to look at. But I did reach out to Abby Driscoll from ODOT, who will be working with us on this project as kind of a technical advisor. Also to Marceline Trout, I cannot say her last name, Marceline from the project coordinator for Art in Public Places. And that's a nonprofit in Bend who basically does all for all of the roundabout art in Bend. It's kind of a different process because they donate it back to the city. There's a lot of funding behind it, but the process that they do is pretty tremendous, and they do it kind of month in and month out. So she was a great help with how we could move this process forward. And then I met with Kathy Degendorfer, who was on the original Roundabout Art Committee, and talked to her about the process and what it looked like. So because they started from scratch back in 2016, when they started it took about 2.5 years to actually get the art put in place. They started in July 2016. It was placed in April of 2019. So just so that you kind of know the expanded process here, we're going to try to do this process in about 1.5 years, if we can, starting right now, moving towards installation in fall of 2025. So a couple of pieces along the way that will change from the last time. They were working with the federal government. That was a federal grant, so there was some different stipulations on it. And there was also, because of where it was placed and how they were doing it, they already had the theme basically assigned to them because it was part of the scenic byway, the entrance to the scenic byway. We don't have a theme at this point, but one of the things that if you're in agreement, I would like to do is actually put out a survey for the public to weigh in on the general theme for the artwork. And within the staff report, I talked about within the development code, there's a number of themes that our public art needs to follow. They're very broad, which is actually probably good, but it would be good to get a great idea from the public of what they might think the theme for this project should be, including that it's kind of the welcome entrance to Sisters, as well as to the region if you're heading towards Bend. So that's one of the first steps that we would do, actually probably starting next week, even before the committee was formed, just so we could kind of get a head up on what themes might be relevant to the community. Selection committee will be formed. It's different than, we're looking at it a little differently than something like the stakeholder committee. So I'm not before you with a resolution to form a committee. It would be more of a, not quite a technical advisor committee, but they are very much technical folks that would be on the committee. And I've outlined in the staff report who that might be: members from the Art Association, somebody who had already worked on the project from the Barkley Roundabout, somebody from Explore Sisters, and a community member with experience in larger scale art installations. So I've been kind of talking to some folks, kind of getting in the back of my mind who might fit that bill. So there'd be about 5 people on the committee that would kind of work through this process, including the call to artists. And then Jackson, our project coordinator for Public Works, would also be there, as well as myself. And then Abby Driscoll from ODOT would be somewhat of our technical advisor on this project. So those are the kind of the first 2 steps that hopefully, if you're in agreement, we can move forward with in the next month and a half. And then we'll work for a call to artists. We use Cafe, which is an art call that we used last time and which has been used across the West. It is what Art in Public Places uses, and it's pretty cohesive, not very expensive, and seems like it'll be fairly easy to use for that process. There will be a public input as well, not just on the theme, but as we move through the process, so the public will have a say. We will have art on display, so they can, which we did last time, where they can go in and make comments and decide which ones they like the best. But in the end, the committee will make a recommendation to staff, and staff will then make a recommendation to council on the art that's chosen. So that's kind of the process, walking through the timeline, looking at the theme of the artwork in the next about month and a half. Selection committee formed in May, call to artist hopefully out in late June, applications due at the end of August, and then really working on design and those types of things all the way up until January 2025. Public input January, February 2025, and commission selection mid-February in 2025, with the installation hopefully installed by the summer or at the latest fall of 2025. So about a year and a half in that process. Which I said, it's, once we assign the contract, developing, particularly if they're doing something in bronze, is a pretty lengthy process. So that's a little bit about the project. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them for you. And
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of about the funding. Can you explain the funding, how that works?
yeah, so the funding is coming from the URA. So the roundabout, that portion of the roundabout is within the URA. And we right now, I believe it's 425,000 assigned in the proposed budget for artwork and landscaping within that, which seems like a lot. And actually, I was going to talk to you about this. Thank you for mentioning that. We had put 150,000 in for the art, and I would have to say that's a tentative number, not having talked to a committee. I did look at some of the costs of some of the Bend roundabout art and what they're paying. This is probably a larger roundabout, and we did bump up above that, but we may need to adjust that. So there's definitely some room within that URA funding to be able to do that piece, but would just like to know that the landscaping is part of that as well for what's in that proposed budget.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the 150 number going, yeah, I don't think so.
Well, and it's interesting because that is really more than what's being paid for art in roundabouts in Bend, which are bronzed. It's super interesting. We at first thought it would be quite a bit more as well. So
Yeah,
we'll have to take the temperature on that with the committee.
but it's not written in stone.
No, this is just
Not
a,
a-
yeah.
It's not forged in bronze.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was
I-
getting that.
Yeah,
And
I also
like Harry
think
said,
that
words.
looking at a number of the roundabouts and bend in the art, it's not terribly complex. A lot of it, it's nice, it's easy, it's simple, but from a bronzing and casting perspective, there's a lot less staff time in something like that than there is in a large project like the one at the other end of town where each piece is cast separately. I've been to the bronze factory in Joseph and watched how they do that, and there's a significant amount of time that goes into just prepping the molds for the bronzing.
I would
process,
say
casting
that
process.
Ben's, a lot of their art isn't themed at all. And so I think that when you theme something, it can
That could
put
be
it into a
possible.
place where it might be a little more complex, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think that's what I was trying to.
do-
say. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Do you have a preview of what those themes could be?
Bulldozer.
So yeah, they actually were in the staff report. So they are in the,
I didn't
in the-
look at it
they're-
that close,
they're
obviously.
in the development code. So the themes related to Sisters, Western heritage, culture, recreation, natural surroundings, wildlife, or history. They're very broad.
Yeah,
So if somebody chose natural surroundings, that could be animals, it could be a number of things. So they're very broad, and that the development code was adjusted. I'd have to go back and look, but I want to say it was about 2019, 2020, because the planning commission actually had the approval for art at one point, and that was taken out. So,
Good.
and we do have an art policy that we're relying on for some of these pieces as well. So that's why it comes to council for that final deliberation. That is in our art policy.
yeah, okay. Cool. Any other questions? I think everybody's excited. It's kind of the
Yeah.
fun part, and it's also the end part. So
Yeah.
once that's in and the landscaping's in,
Yeah.
we all get to go stand out there and take a picture or something.
So I would ask for some grace on the schedule, just based as when we get the committee in place, understanding what we look like as far as being able to kind of move things along.
Yeah, you said May and it's already halfway through May, basically.
Done a lot of work on it so far, so we're not going to have to go in with a complete blank slate like we did last time, though. So the call to artist is primarily written, there's some feedback needed,
Yeah.
and some other things so it'll be a little bit of a different process, but still will take some work.
Wasn't there 97 submissions or something last time?
In the initial, and we have a kind of a different, Art in Public Places uses a different kind of process for submissions, so we could get a number. The other thing that I did do, and actually I would like to ask you about this, is it was a national search before because we were using federal dollars, and this I've narrowed to Northwest and Southwest United States, listing the states of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, California, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah. So artists from those states can submit work, not across the entire
I think that's a good
United
idea,
States.
especially being themed the way we probably will.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'm all for it.
I'm just surprised in Oregon, somebody doesn't have a roundabout warehouse, art warehouse. you
Yeah,
know,
right.
just- you could just roll a cart in there and pick
You're
something
giving
out,
away your best ideas.
know.
You gotta stop that.
go home, do that.
Well, I was trying to get through that without everybody knowing I didn't really read it that close, and I messed that up.
Well, you know.
I did. I'm good.
Yeah.
Head nods, yeah.
All right, we'll start
Thank
moving
you.
Looking forward
forward.
to it.
That's great.
That
Yeah.
bulldozer is gonna gleam in the sun.
We'll leave that there until for the next year. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. All right, staff comments.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Okay, staff are here to answer questions if you have any. I'm going to be providing updates across the board. First is we have the Budget Committee meeting next week, May 15th, 9 to 2. So staff will be a part of those presentations too, but we're hoping to be able to get through it in one day. We'll feed you to keep you energized and engaged as we go through the budget. Speaking of budget, we have the draft ready. There's one sitting right here, actually. So we hope to assemble and have those binders ready to go out to the Council and Budget Committee tomorrow. That's always a monumental thing for us, is to get the budget out. Following the budget meeting on the 15th, on May 16th, the mayor has on his calendar is a water summit in Redmond that we'll be attending along with cities in Central Oregon as part of COCO, and also some state representatives too that will be attending virtually. Special thanks to staff, Emmy, Jackson, counselors who attended the Arbor Day celebration and planted trees on a rainy day, which is probably a good day to plant trees. And had some great community participation and kiddos out there too, helping out. So we have, what, 150? How many do we put in the ground? Something like that.
It's a good number.
Yeah, over Creekside. So, yeah.
I think it was 75 that we put in
Wow.
out of the 135.
Prolific.
No, not just me.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
The whole group.
I was prepared to be impressed.
No. The whole.
Are your
group.
arms still sore?
No, I had a lot of help.
The soil was pretty soft. It wasn't
Yeah.
too bad there along the
Yeah.
creek. The civic leadership group will have 2 more meetings before they come to council and present their report. And they've been working on communications, public information, and engagement. Thank you to the counselors that have attended and done an introduction at those meetings. So that's on the June 12th workshop that we have targeted for having the group attend. Drum roll, the new street banners are here. They've been delivered, and the plan is for them to go up next week. And then on the Explore Sisters update, there's a new board member from the Ski Inn, Brady Rhodes, that can represent both the restaurant and hotel industries. So they'll be on the board there. And then the Sisters Makers, I think we heard Eric Strobel mention Makers and working with them. Their plan is to start moving into the building next week. The opening, I think, is the grand opening will be June 28th for the art walk. Probably have a presence when the farmers market starts up on June 1st, though. Okay, on development services, UGB. So the steering committee is now, we can get rolling on getting those application notices out and start forming that group. The consultant is working away on a draft needs report that will update, the land needs for the expanded UGB. And then the council, the goal here is to have perhaps even a joint meeting with the steering committee members, planning commission, city council to review the report in June. And then get public input on that report once it's complete and issued in front of the public bodies too. And then the public outreach for the UGB, we're going to be starting that up. There's going to be a nugget article. There's going to be it'll be in the Roundup newsletter every month, and of course social media. And we have the city website on growth management, the UGB up, and that will be continuing to be updated with input from the steering committee, the consultants, and the work that's going on at the council level and everything too. So lots of information will start flying around about this project now. Upcoming on the Planning Commission on May 16th is the continuation of the tourist commercial code amendments for that text amendment. And then it looks like on June 20th is when the short-term rental ordinance will be reviewed. So those things will be coming to council after that. So gear up for those items coming from the Planning Commission staff work on that. Building hardening is also being worked on, and so that'll be that's in the queue too, coming after those items going through the Planning Commission with those building code requirements to become more fire resilient and having a stronger code around building resiliency and hardening for fire. So that's also coming this summer, June, July. And then finally, the dark skies work. Scott's been giving you updates at council meetings about forming some kind of a loose community group to kind of help us implement the dark skies new code updates, and then getting that application submitted for certification this summer. It was mentioned about the housing forums. Thank you, Councilor Letts, and then Emmy Shoup was a part of that panel, and I've heard that all the feedback has been very positive. That everyone I've talked to, I think it was over 135 people were in attendance at that. And C4C did record it. I don't know if the video is up yet, but I know they're working on it if it's not up yet. Okay, roundabout, concrete, we've seen it out there. The stamped concrete's looking really good. Nice hue to it. It's not pink, as our public works director likes to say. So it's looking good. They did have some delays with the weather. We did get a lot of cold weather, wet weather, some snow actually in town over the last week or two. So a little bit of delays going on there. The goal and the plan and expectation is that the westbound and northbound approaches will be open on Memorial Day, and traffic will still be able to flow through town as things get busy. I have been seeing a lot of special events permits come in, a couple around Memorial Day. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening as usual as summer gets rolling. And speaking of that, we have the rodeo parade on with staffing all prep to do parade detours starting on or happening on the 8th of June. And it will be, I think I mentioned before, we'll be testing out the alternate route there to kind of detour the westbound traffic there onto the alternate route over to Hood and then Pine and over to Jefferson. So be kind of interesting to kind of work the parade with the new roundabout and the alternate route going one way and then coming around the other way too with the other detour. So looking forward to seeing how that tests out.
You've had that in your past before.
Yeah. Yeah. Coastal highways are never fun. So then the overlay project that is happening right now, which is great to kind of get that substantially complete. I think there's still some crack sealing and stuff that has to go on, but that was approved by council just a couple months ago, got a great price on it. And I know there was also kind of a delayed start there as we got cold weather and rainy weather on the day they were supposed to get going. And then, okay, finally, we talked about SDCs tonight. The council had the work session on the utility rates. We are now working on the public information with the utility rate increases. We have a flyer that will be, I think that you guys saw and as you reviewed the utility rates, that will be mailed to all customers, I think, starting next week. So we'll start getting information out about the water and wastewater rates, kind of set expectations and get information about our projects and what to expect as in their bills starting July 1st. So,
Whoops, sorry.
and that's it. Happy to answer questions or have staff answer questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
In a previous council meeting, at the tail end of it, we had a little discussion about the crime rates. You know, that it's on the internet and it's misrepresenting sisters. And I just wondered if there's any progress to report there on doing something from our own city determining that?
No progress yet on
Okay.
calculating that, but when we had the annual report from DCSO, it was a good chance for council to kind of work with them on, helping clarify what you were looking for, and we'll continue to work with them on taking that information and calculating the crime rate for you.
I'm sorry. I thought what we discussed was, what you and I discussed was that the city could take responsibility for using those numbers and coming up with the high crimes that we're worried about, the 5 or 6 high crimes. And then we would send that back to them and say, okay, these are the ones we want to have numbers on. But I don't think we've done that yet.
like, causing a fire, or rape, or,
Categories.
The cat,
Yeah,
like
the
the part
categories.
one crimes versus part two crimes.
yes.
And running the rates on that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know how we move that needle and start, getting that going.
We'll keep working on it.
Okay, all right. And then I had one other, that I can't remember, so I won't ask you.
If it comes up, let me know.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about the meeting we had? No,
Yesterday?
yeah.
We'll work.
Yeah, I think that, I wouldn't mind saying something, I'll say something about it, how's that?
Yeah.
I'll take it. Okay.
I want to know.
I'll
know
tell
what
you
you're talking about.
when it's
Yeah.
my turn, I'll tell
Okay.
you. All right, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
I have nothing to mail.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Um, let's do our stuff. You want
Okay,
me to just go first and I'll talk about it?
Sure.
Um,
I guess I'll wrap.
in the spirit of cooperation, I was requested by the postmaster to have a meeting. And we had the meeting yesterday here in City Hall. We hosted them. And it was, an interesting mix. It was the postmaster, the previous postmaster and their contracted, carrier people. It's one company that contracts all the carriers out of the Sisters Post Office. And the, underlying theme was, we're running out of room, there at the post office, and we, we tried to help guide them in the directions that they need to go to try and take care of that, which is mostly through their own people in general. I mean, we want to be helpful, but, they're a federal, entity and they need to go through their people, and they haven't had a lot of discussions yet internally, so, it was interesting to know that, what they felt, but they're concerned that even this Christmas, they're gonna be just completely overloaded.
They're being clobbered by Amazon. They're handling almost all the Amazon traffic now that used to go to FedEx and UPS.
They actually mentioned that, they're really not a mail service anymore. They're a parcel service.
Yep.
And, they're just running out of room, and I don't think anybody didn't know that. I think everybody knew that, but, apparently it's quite alarming internally for those guys.
And they've worked through all the obvious avenues and decided that a shot at the city might be the.
I think they wanted to trade buildings.
they wanted what?
Did not think that.
No.
Don't listen, don't
They,
listen,
they,
don't listen.
they,
Joking.
no, it's good. We have a relationship now, though, that we didn't have before.
Yeah,
so
but I
that's the
mean,
most
it's
important-
just
good.
interesting that they somehow
Don't
thought.
they have mail trucks? Don't we have mail trucks still, or doesn't the nation have mail trucks?
Yeah,
No,
They're called
in
Amazon.
most of the rural, post offices, they're contracted out, so.
yeah.
And that's why you see, people's personal vehicles being the carriers.
In fact, you drive from here to the coast at the time of day when mail's being delivered, and 90% of that mail is in someone's personal car with a little flashing light on the top, maybe. And they're not a left-hand, not a right-hand drive car, so they're also trying to drive on Highway 20 like this
Yeah.
and get the mail out the window. So it's a tricky business.
Yeah, not to be disrespectful of the people in our own post office,
No,
but
they're very good.
the system, the US postal system is quite antiquated and, difficult to navigate even for their own people.
Well, they've been defunded for many years, and then we've got somebody like DeJoy that thinks it's supposed to be a business.
I think one thing that maybe we can help is, something like this is this public awareness that their workload we're a fast growing city, right? And so, this is a 15-year-old post office building that is already at capacity.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why they're at capacity is that very thing about Amazon. And after 2020 in particular, the explosion of people ordering things online for whatever, Amazon, Walmart, everything else, has really added to their workload. And so just kind of the public awareness of give your post office carrier and some grace, that they're contract employees, they're working long hours, it's really increased. But for us, it's also kind of an interesting, we don't have a lot and besides addressing really and street naming or whatever, we don't have a lot to do with the postal service, right? And we don't have a lot of facilities or land to help facilitate things that you see maybe, take decades to happen, but working with the post office's site and maybe find facilities that can expand capacity. But what we can do is also have maybe some influence with our representatives and contact the higher ups to kind of say, hey, we're a fast growing city. You guys need to plan for adequate facilities or fully fund contractors to be able to deliver parcels and packages and the mail to our residents.
Well, and another part of the problem is the decision to close the regional processing centers
That's
like
right.
the one in Bend. So that means they have to hold a lot more material in the building, waiting for that truck that goes to Portland once a day. And when it comes in, it's full and they have to handle it all then. So you can't stagger the workload
And that's,
like you could when it was going back and forth to Bend.
and I don't know if you got a chance to ask this, but it's like, yeah, they closed that center in Bend, but it's like, all right, when do we hit a population threshold in Central Oregon again when we get that back? Because it's just, I mean,
Well,
I've sent letters to
I'll give
go
you,
across town that took a week.
they almost closed the one in Eugene and
Um,
Peter DeFazio kept it open. They just think the one in Portland can handle the whole state.
Centrally located, Portland.
Yep.
The,
So how
their-
big you have
their
to be, bigger than
regional-
Eugene.
the regional people in charge are all in Denver, which
Yep.
is kind of surprising too. That's pretty far away. So anyway, it was a good meeting.
Well, maybe we could loan them a great big semi or something. I mean, just they have storage there.
I think they said, weren't they doing Connex boxes or something, or in the past, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
know they
talked
had-
about looking at what temporary solutions versus, whatever we can do planning wise, help them kind of envision what an expansion or remodel would look like there.
I think we,
Are they feeling like they need a new parcel, or do they feel like they can expand on the parcel?
Honestly, it almost felt like they're at step one.
yeah,
Okay.
they came to us very early, which is kind of cool in the sense
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
thought we could help them out. And I think we kind of did help them out. And we'll just have, if I can connect them with the right people.
It might be worth having them talk to Eric or Edco, because they're such an integral part of business.
True.
Just getting them as an ally, if anything, the business community.
The one asset that they have is they have a building and they have a piece of land. And I think that the first thing they should do is hopefully find a way that they can improve that building instead of,
Expand
you
it
know,
somehow.
and, trying to look for another building, or that seems like a lot more expensive than trying to fix what you got, right? So, but again, just.
Maybe they could
early
buy the
dis-
Conklin house.
Just early discussion, right? So.
Well, that's very bizarre, because I was looking at Dial today and maps because of stuff, and I panned over the post office and I thought, when are they gonna expand?
Yeah.
I literally thought that today, like a few hours ago, so.
Well, that's
Yeah.
because
In
you
your
heard, you
mind.
must have heard it.
Yeah,
Must
you're
be connected.
itching.
I think I went to the LOC conference right after the last meeting. It was a really good conference. It's the first spring LOC conference I ever went to. And now that I've been mayor for 3 years, I know all the other mayors. I know a lot of the other people going down there, and I felt way more connected to it. It's a good thing about having a couple years under your belt. I talked to Helms and Owens about water, and of course, they're gonna be at the summit again. There was a lot of things about housing, and Tammy Bainey was there doing a presentation, and nothing got solved, but at least things are being talked about, and little ideas come out of that, and connections come out of that, and regional cooperation comes out of all of that, and it was definitely worth it. Definitely the best conference I've been to, and I'm really looking forward to annual conference, what is it, October?
Yeah.
October in Bend, for LOC. And then, of course, I'm doing OMA, Oregon Mayors Association Conference, which is also gonna be in Klamath Falls. I don't know how they did that, so I get to do Klamath Falls in July as well.
Oh, it's fun in July.
Oh,
You should drive through all
The
the. midgets
pavement's
on the-
melting,
Yeah, I
the
get,
lake smells real good,
Midgets.
and the midges are thick.
well, they've gotten rid of a few of the dams down there already, so I don't know. Anyway, what else? I guess that's it. Who's next?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Over the last 2 weeks, I'll go in random order. So the C4C event, I think went really well. We've heard it already. I big thank to Emmy, not only providing her, city experience, but also a little bit of her personal experience. I'm willing to share that as kind of being the youngest person on that panel. But many thanks to C4C. They did a great job of organizing it and prepping for it. So again, we didn't solve anything, but I think we want to go in there just educating the public on some kind of key points and maybe, places that we can then move forward on. So I think that was accomplished. I know you're all taking turns at this. This was my week for the CLA to talk to them in the beginning of their session here on Monday, Leadership Academy. So that was exciting to see. Looks like a really great group of people. So I'm hoping that they're really enjoying it. Attended the Arbor Day tree planting. That was a little soggy, but again, good for trees, good for planting. Hopefully the trees are happy. And Eric Strobel invited me to the EDCO business roundup. Usually that's, electeds like us are not usually involved, but he wanted me to come and see, and it was fantastic because it was really a great to just be on a fly on the wall basically and see just some of the business owners and operators in our community and kind of swapping ideas and updating each other and supporting each other.
I've done that before, and at one of them, they said, we're gonna talk about some stuff we don't want you to know about, so just please leave. So I left early because they didn't want to say it. in
Oh,
front of
yeah.
me, Which is great.
Stay in the back of the room.
Yeah.
And I attended the superintendent's coffee last week. So, school district is trying to finish up the elementary school and, having lots of interesting conversations with the construction firm and then the architect. The architect kind of morphed halfway through the project, ownership of the company. So that's thrown a few wrinkles in there, but they said they are out of money on that project. So, enough money to finish it and nothing else fancy after that. So, and we hosted, I'm a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for Deschutes County. So we hosted the meeting here. Thanks to Rebecca and Jackson and I co-presented a roundup of everything we were working on, and they gave us 55 minutes in the schedule, and we're like, oh my God, we're not going to need that. And we used 55 minutes because we got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of things we've accomplished in the last couple of years, because we also feathered it into, talking about the East Portal and the transportation and that, kind of how that melds with the bike ped, things like that. So, and we had a good turnout of our committee members, and everybody seems really interested and excited to hear what we were doing. So I think that went really well, and I thank the staff here for helping out with that. And I think that's it.
Okay, Gary?
That's why I'm so tired.
Not too much, Arbor Day, great time.
Sorry, I missed it.
It was, I think the thing I had the most fun watching were the kids with the little itty bitty watering cans that somebody came up with. Thank you, whoever thought of that. They really liked it, and to you for filling them endlessly. And it was good. People were in there. There were parents there and children all participating. On a side note, about a week, maybe beginning this week or the end of last week, the Deschutes Watershed was there with a truck full of more plantings, and they were bringing in a magnet school from Bend to do a whole bunch of plantings in the riparian zone as well, mainly native plants as well as some willows.
Nice.
So that was kind of fun to see. And again, I also spoke to the CLA, a good group of people. I think that it's a real smart thing for us to be doing, and probably is something we need to think about in the future as to how we can continue to nurture future leaders for our community.
Let's do it again next year.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, something like that, so when we can pull it off. How many of them can start to participate is hard to say, but we have a more informed electorate, more informed citizenry, and that's really what we're aiming for. And we're aiming for people to vote us out and vote themselves in. Younger,
I'm all for it.
smarter, wiser.
Take it on.
Yep.
All right.
Do you want to go before me, Andrea? Oh, I don't care. We unfortunately are losing a great staff person from the Coordinated Houseless Committee, right in the middle of just getting things going. So that's kind of put things up in the air a little bit. I don't know whether it's a monkey in the wrench enough to really create a problem, or whether COIC has somebody else that they feel can step into that role. We'll see. Got a meeting coming up next week. So that's kind of interesting. And we're gonna have a little coordination between the Central Oregon COCO, yeah, the COCO and the COACT, on the transportation issues, because they're both coming at it from different different directions. And rightly so, our coordinator guy from COI said, well, maybe we should work on that together. Maybe we should get together on that instead of coming. And so that will be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our lobbyist Doug Riggs for COCO works with COIC, so it
Yeah.
totally makes sense that he's gonna be kind of the coalescer.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Matter of fact, I want to get him in here in front of council. I know we talked about that, all right, so let's try and work.
Next week.
Yeah,
Good idea.
we'll see him at COCO next week and try and nail down a date, so we know when he's coming.
And I got a survey from the Regional Housing Group about what that group should be doing, what we want out of it, how we go about it, what's important. And so we will see what the results are of that, and I'll be able to report maybe a little better on what we're going to try and do with it. So we'll see what the survey results are. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so Regional Solutions has this new process to have a appointed person. And what one needs to do is apply, and then it goes to the LOC, and then they look at the applications and decide who's going to represent. So I went online and looked at the application. It's like a very thorough job application. So I don't know if I'm running in September, and I don't know if anyone on the council wants to try to fill in that and try to apply. But what I would like to suggest is that we continue as we are, receiving the reports from Xavier, and because he is our contact.
Yeah.
And maybe go when we need to go directly to him, because he's supposed to be an advocate for getting us funding faster and kind of breaking through any blocks.
Once they get the group together of applicants and then they pick whoever they want, hopefully we will get agendas that will say what they're working on, and so that if there is something we're interested in, we'll have some idea that it may become.
I don't know if you would get an agenda unless you had an applicant, unless you had a representative from the city there. I don't know.
Yeah, and you wonder, is the city representative going to represent all the cities?
Yeah, because they're really downsizing that committee.
Right,
so,
yeah.
There has to be a way to inform the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah, so I
don't even know if
you
they have a
agree.
vehicle yet.
Yeah, so if you agree, I think we'll just continue to receive the report.
Yeah,
And
I ran into Zavi down at the LOC meeting, so we exchanged cards, but we're not on like a first name basis or anything like that, so.
yeah,
But at least I know how to get hold of them.
He comes
Little
to
better.
our housing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Really,
I
he
think it
shows up
behoo-
at
I-
the meeting.
OIC once in a while.
I don't
I see
think it
him
hurts us at
periodically.
all if we all kind of get to know him a little bit and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I mean, maybe invite him here to present
He'd
what,
probably do it. I
Yeah.
think he lives in Bend, so.
yeah. You were going to say something?
Well, So when I reached out to LLC about what their process will be for forwarding names to be the city representatives on the, Patty Olive Hill just said, well, just send me names and I'll send them to the executive committee. But she needed it last week, so I put in your name, Councilor
Okay.
Bob, and
All
said,
right.
well, add her to the list and see where it goes. I don't know what the executive committee's process will be for
Yeah, I don't,
picking who would be the Central Oregon representative, but my understanding is each region, 11 region, there'll be a city rep. How they select that, I don't know, but then I would assume that city rep then is responsible for some.
No, they're only, my understanding is the city rep is only responsible for the city. Javier is responsible for Central Oregon.
Right.
Yeah,
As the regional citizens coordinator
Regional, yeah.
for this region, but there is going to be an advisory board for each region that has members
okay.
from different
Yeah,
industries,
Yeah, it's
whatever,
just
yeah.
wonky.
Who's on
Yeah.
first? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
I mean, it's, okay.
I appreciate you trying to know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, thank you for doing it.
Well,
You're passionate and I appreciate that.
Getting
And
the-
that's why I
Sure.
wanted you on there.
Thank you.
That's the whole reason.
Okay, shall council write a letter of support for Cheryl's Perlerin's Romeo's Joy? I'm happy to write a letter myself in support, she asked me, but then I thought it might be something council would like to.
I didn't understand
I
how
didn't
that's.
understand either.
Okay, Cheryl Pellerin
Yeah.
has a little business that, and it's a nonprofit. And it's called Romeo's Joy. She sent a letter to us all and she talked to us, a week or so ago, whenever it was. Anyway, what she does is, what the business is, if I can remember correctly, is, for people who have Alzheimer's or, yeah, I'm remembering this, and they have these automated, dogs that the person can talk to and the dog responds and it gives them some company and comfort. And, actually the people end up feeling better and whatnot. So, that's the thing. I can resend the letter to you and we can talk about it again the next week. I don't know when she needs the the letter.
She's
report.
applying for funding.
She's
for her.
applying for funding and, we would just be writing a letter of support of the idea that, this is a worthy thing. And when she presented
I
to
have
us-
no idea that it is worthy.
Oh, well, when she presented to us, we all liked it.
Did she present to council?
She didn't present to
New
council.
to me.
Yeah.
New to me. as
I've
well.
never heard anything about this.
All I knew was about the Alzheimer's thing that was over at the church, but I heard nothing else about this.
No, it was I'm sorry. It was in a C4C meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was
that was
gonna
my
say,
fault.
boy, I am losing it
I
now.
was thinking the same
No,
thing.
but-
I know I've been on
but
lot
she
of
did
stress,
send a
but I think
letter
I
to the
remember that
council.
one.
Yeah.
Mechanical
I
dog. Did
received
she,
that.
Did she?
Or did she?
Did she do a
I've
public comment just on her own one time? maybe?
So I'm looking back at emails. I recommended that she could come and make a request to city council
Oh,
and
okay.
explain the project. I think that was,
But
yeah,
she
it
hasn't
was just
replied?
last week. So,
Okay.
Okay.
I think she was asking for a letter by the 10th.
Oh, okay. Well, we're
So-
past that. Okay.
Friday.
On the dark skies, I just want to let you know, I went, saw the presentation at COIC on dark skies and I sent that on to you guys, the slide deck. But I think it's really important to highlight that there's only 2 municipalities that are applying. Ours and Antelope, which has a population of 48 people.
Where they took the streetlights down and everybody.
Right. The other area is the Black Butte. And they've been trying to do this for a long time, but then they got waylaid during COVID. And I just talked with Denny Tower of Black Butte and Susan Wydell is gonna maybe talk to Scott just to kind of have yes, thank you. So that's that. At COIC,
The one thing I wanted to share from the last CUIC meeting is, CUIC is working on being a qualified entity for STIF. So, because right now they're working through, with 4 other organizations. They're doing redundant work for each. And it would just be smoother, more efficient for them if the STIF the pass-through was through them instead of going to these other entities and then coming back to them for help and then going back out. So that's that. Yeah, so that's all I have.
And thank you, you reminded me of something. Scott asked me to write a letter of support for the actual application, I guess. And I wrote it. Did you send it back to me and I owe you an email?
Which application?
Okay, yeah, so I wrote a letter of support for the actual application for the Dark Skies.
Oh, cool.
International Dark Skies Community.
Yay.
So, I guess once we're done editing it and stuff, we'll send it so everybody can see it. Sound good? Yeah. I actually wrote a pretty darn good letter.
Yay. Sure.
I impressed myself.
You weren't in the dark?
No, I was not. Are we done?
We're done.
Are we?
Done. I didn't.